Hello, everybody. This is John, and that's Michael. This is the P-LotPodcast special holiday episode
Weekend edition.
weekend. Like we broadcast live typically every Saturday, sometimes Sunday, depending on. But we still like always talk about football and we're gonna and all the other sports. We're taking a little bit of a break from that because there's nothing really much going on. I mean, we've talked about the disaster that is the Philadelphia 76ers. Newsflash, nothing's really changed. The Flyers are playing much better. I think it's nice to see the Flyers playing better. The Flyers are 9-3-2 since they've called up Emil Andre, the preseason standout. I also think it's just because Matvey Michkov has just kind of kicked it into another gear, and you could just tell the team has just started to click now unless they figured out their lines, etc. And Hot Stove is ironically quite cold right now. Blake Snell signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers. That was the biggest piece of baseball news. Deferred money, Michael. Surprise, surprise. Um, I don't know. I'm not really. Everyone was kind of freaking out about them getting Snell. I know you're not the biggest Snell guy.
No, nice pitcher when he's pitching well. It's just he is one of the strangest pitchers I think in the history of the sport because he's only hit 30 starts in a season twice, and both those times he won the Cy Young. But you know, he's such a even on his good days, you're gonna get a decent bit of walks from him. He tends to be better in the second. It's just an interesting pitcher, but it does feel like it kind of fits the bill for what type of pitchers the Dodgers do get. A guy that has had some health issues or inconsistent issues, but for them, they might just break the right way. Just kind of how it goes. They're
Yeah,
building out a rotation like with a bunch of big name players and really good players, but all those really good players have like some defects, if you will, a little Moneyball reference. They all have some sort of issue that they just kind of deal with. Like for example, they flew past Glasnow's innings limit in the regular season, and he had to be shut down for the rest of the year. Like the Dodgers, they have great talent evaluators. They have great like money people to help kind of just willingly spend and then be smart about their money and good drafters, great player development, great talent evaluators, but they're kind of stupid in the way that they like treat and use their players to the fact that they just kind of let guys get hurt all the time, especially their pitchers. Like
yeah. I wonder if this is why when they signed Snell, I was surprised because I assumed they were going to sign Roki Sasaki, and now I'm
they still
thinking.
might. I mean, who knows?
But I also think too, maybe after how they handled Yamamoto, that maybe Roki Sasaki's agent is maybe doesn't want him to go to the Dodgers because of what you just said. If Roki Sasaki goes and blows his arm out like twice with the Dodgers, he's going to have a hard time commanding a large
A
contract
big contract eventually,
because
yeah.
he's going to be treated like Paul Skeens is going to be treated in terms of his MLB service time.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. But the Dodgers, you know, not to really wrap in, but you see how the Phillies handle their arms and how they don't really get hurt a ton. Like Wheeler being the biggest example of managing his starts, maybe an IL stint here or there to ensure that it's not the big one. Like he doesn't need to miss months at a time. Or even you see how, you know, their pitchers that were coming up through the system that they ended up trading to the Angels, they totally started sucking after the fact. It's interesting to see how different teams operate and that like the Dodgers could totally benefit. Dodgers and the Rays are both like this, to be honest, that they could totally benefit from being a little more cautious with their pitchers' arms to be able to maximize them throughout the course of a season instead of just kind of pushing go, go, go from opening day until however long it lasts. So it'll be interesting to see how their rotation as a whole holds up. You'll have like 3 of your starters who dealt with serious injuries last year in Otani, Glasnow, and Yamamoto, and then you have some other ones with some history. It'll be interesting, but besides Snell and Tommy Edman signing an extension with the Dodgers, there really has not been much on said hot stove other than some dry rumors, basically, about stuff. So we have no idea what's going to happen. But anyways, today is a very football centered show.
Yeah, and I think we should be a good time. We normally talk about the Thursday game, and Michael, since it is the NFL on Thanksgiving, there's plenty of games now to talk
Hmm.
about. It used to just be two. Now there's four. Lumping in Black Friday into that discussion, of course. But
Yeah.
let's talk. Let's talk about the first Thanksgiving game, the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. Well, now that we've
Oh,
had some,
the
now that
Chicago
we've had some
Bears.
time to talk, now that there's been 48 hours between that game, a lot's happened in Chicago with that. So, in case you were cooking Thanksgiving dinner, helping with Thanksgiving dinner, or overall just, I don't know, working, didn't get a chance to watch the game, the Chicago Bears took the Detroit Lions to the limit up until Michael, maybe one
The
of the
Bears
worst.
did it up again.
I was
The
gonna say maybe
Bears did the Bears
one of
thing.
the worst like time management
It's
losses I've ever seen.
yeah. I mean that loss puts gave the Bears their um, mm, three- sixth loss of the season by one possession, and their fourth loss in the last month that was solely because of really, really insanely, intensely bad coaching decisions and stupidity and just choking on your own air, basically. Like it's unbelievable. Between there's just so much that went down. So just start with this game and then we'll go back. Like the Lions were playing with their food a little bit early in the game. They, did not really show
Nice
much
pun there.
respect with the Bears. They were just trying to do what they could, make a big showcase, trying to throw a pass with Penei Sewell, the typical Lions garbage that they do that works because they're a very good team.
I
And
feel like it's like a meme at this point because every time they do it, everyone like just posts about and how like brilliant they are because they're a really good team. You
yeah,
know,
and Ben Johnson, like, you have Penei Sewell trying to throw a pass, which is really just not smart, whatever. But then you have just some really creative route concepts, like and that one to Amon-Ra St. Brown where he was running like mesh concept, but then he just turned around and broke it off, and it was wide open. It was a great play. But anyways, Lions they kind of got to a comfortable lead. Bears start slowly churning back, and all of a sudden have the ball in their hands with an opportunity to at least tie the game, potentially score a touchdown and win it. The way they were moving the ball the previous drives, it looked like that was a legitimate possibility that they might just go down and win the whole damn game. And then a comedy of errors that started way back earlier in that second half when the Bears were backed up on their own goal line and it was like 3rd and 5 or something, or 3rd and 7 from their 2.5-yard line. And Matt Eberflus decided to call a timeout to save a delay of game when you were already basically on your own goal line.
it would have been
Not
3rd and 8 or
Yeah,
third
you
and
would have
nine.
moved back like a yard or a half a yard, and like that would have been it. Really, You know that there's just no point in wasting that timeout. That
Yeah,
timeout
because
is much
it's
more
different.
important
It
than
would
the
have been
yard.
different if it was 3rd and 1.
Yes, and like 3rd and 1 from like the 8-yard line or whatever, third from the 9-yard line, and you're right there. Yes, that would have been different, but it wasn't. It was already 3rd and 7, and you were already on your goal line. There was nowhere to go. You couldn't really go back further. They slid the ball a little bit, but they didn't because they called timeout and wasted their timeout. Would have been nice for them to have even an extra timeout, but maybe that wouldn't even have mattered. So fast forward all the way, it's 23-20. The Lions are like you can feel the nervous energy in that crowd. Like they were like, "Oh shit, like we're about to blow this." Or at least go to overtime,
Yeah,
and
the
it's
Lions
not
have a
ideal.
Thanksgiving Day losing streak.
Yeah, it was intervened. So they run on 2nd down what is appears to be a quarterback draw that everyone is acting like it's a quarterback draw except the quarterback. So I don't know where that loss in communication was, or if Caleb Williams tried to change the play and no one picked up on it, or what it was, because the offensive line really, like, there was the center release to go get a linebacker. The tackles let their guys get upfield. Everyone on the offensive line acted like it was a draw. The receivers started blocking like it was a draw. So it should have been a draw, but honestly, I don't think it really would have mattered. There wasn't a ton of space to go anyways, but Caleb Williams dropped back to pass, so I don't think he knew what it was. Regardless of a broken play or not, that just kind of speaks to the lack of preparedness and ineptitude that the Bears have been all season, all off season. Even Keenan Allen saying he knew Shane Waldron after he got fired, saying he knew Shane Waldron might not have been the guy after we were making a lot of mistakes in training camp, and he was just like, "Don't worry, like we'll get it when it matters, like next drill," instead of hammering home, "Hey, we need to get this right now." So that is just kind of bled into what the Bears been all year, and it happens again. Regardless, you take a sack, there's about 35 seconds left, and now you're like out of field goal range, kinda.
You know,
Like
you
you're
you
really
just skipped over all of the penalties that happened on that final drive.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
So
the
I mean, you had
Bears
like Keenan Allen got his helmet ripped off. They didn't call a penalty. He's angry.
rolls the ball at the
Rolls the
ref.
ball at the ref. They penalize him for unsportsmanlike conduct. Then
Mhm.
you had a hold. It was it a, I think it was a holding call on the on the
On a scramble, on a Williams
Chicago, and then
scramble.
the Lions then committed pass interference, and then the Bears
Yeah,
were driving down the field. Which, by the way, they ran that nice drag route
DJ Moore.
with DJ Moore. Put that, I think Kellen Moore put that in the memory banks if the Eagles have to
Mhm,
play Detroit, because they totally bit on that.
mhm,
You
yeah.
know,
So,
and then they had the hands, like it looks like they were going to get right down in field goal range, like down to the
it looked
night.
like they were gonna get, like, comfortable. That's why I was saying, like, the way it was
They were,
moving, I was like,
and then
"They
they called
might
that hands.
score."
They called that hands to the face penalty, which it was. Let's not
Yeah.
act like it
Nope.
wasn't.
Totally.
And
Yeah,
then it looked like
and
Chicago before that committed a false start that didn't get called.
yeah, yeah. It was just a comedy of errors, and then the biggest one of all, Caleb Williams gets sacked. There's 35 seconds to go.
Yeah,
Outside of field goal
Michael,
range.
Michael. By the way, you mentioned that. Yeah, what a very Brian Johnson-esque call. 3rd and long. Let's call it a quarterback
Or
draw.
second, it was like yeah, it was like 2nd and 10. Well, like, that's how I
No, that
know
that was
it was 2nd down, because then the
oh, it was 2nd down, right? Because it eliminated the possibility of them spiking the ball if it was a completion downfield.
yes, they would have had to call timeout. Like, it just regardless of everything, is that 35 seconds left, you have a timeout in your pocket, especially watching with your own 2 eyes that the play that was called that the quarterback had in mind and everyone else had in mind were different. So they're not even on the same page. You just took a sack, you're out of field goal range with 35 seconds. Why not just say, "You know what? Just timeout. Timeout, and we're going to talk it over and we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna talk it over. I'm gonna speak the play to you on the sideline, and everyone's gonna get it. Everyone's gonna know what it is, and we're gonna go out there and we're gonna run it. We're gonna call, like, multiple plays, try to get out of bounds, try to get a first down, make sure the field goal unit's ready to, if they got to run on the field. All that sort of stuff can be easily hammered out if you call timeout with 35 seconds to go. And instead, they just say, let it go, let it go. Caleb Williams gets up on the ball, realizes the play that they have called, they've already wasted so much time that it's like whatever play that we're supposed to be running isn't probably going to be enough to get us into field goal range, and there's not enough time. So he tries to change the play to a big play, trying to just like, okay, I'm
And it
going kind
almost
of for the
worked, Michael.
touchdown. It almost worked. It was kind of covered. It was a little overthrown, like, but it
I,
almost
well,
worked.
I gotta be honest, yeah, I watched that play over like 10 times. So Roma Dunze, if he didn't stop to look for the ball and and then I don't know, not like
Re-pick up his speed. Like it was.
yeah, like Roma Dunze, like I think he's going to be a solid receiver, but man, these
It's just the
Washington
Bears' dysfunction, man. Like it's
these
just the
Washington
Bears.
wide receivers are not looking like they're going to
Yeah,
like the Ohio State wide receivers compared to the Washington ones. It's like
yeah.
night and day.
No, yeah. It was. Listen, it was just.
Like
It's been
he
all year.
stopped running his route, and that's
It's
like the
been
most.
it's been all year with that. Like DJ Moore hopping off the field mid-play, Keenan Allen running lazy routes. So it's just been all year. And the ball falls incomplete and the game is over. And that's just it. Then the Bears once again find a way to lose. And you ask Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, both said, not really sure why we didn't call a timeout. You ask Caleb Williams, and he says, I'm just doing what I'm coached and being told to do by coaches. Maybe later in my career, I'll take a little bit more authority, but basically saying, like, as a rookie, I'm trusting my coaches almost blindly. And maybe that was his final dig to be like, please get rid of this guy. Like this was all him. And Matt Eberflus tops it off with he has no regrets with the decision making and he thought that it was the correct decision. And there you go. The clock just slowly dissipated from 35 seconds to about 6 seconds by the time the ball was snapped. And not once. You could have even at 20 seconds been like, you know what, timeout, timeout. I don't like how this is going. I know we just wasted 15 seconds, but at least I have something. Like they just watched it melt down and didn't do a damn thing about it. And you know, that's just again, I said their fourth loss in the last month that have been disasters. So we can go back. Commander game, the Hail Mary, the play before the Hail Mary, where the Bears just conceded about like 12 yards in order to allow the Commanders to get into Hail Mary range, where Matt Eberflus says, we're not really worried about the play before the Hail Mary. We don't care about that. We just need to stop the Hail Mary. And crazy, it feels like it's almost a skit, the way that it cuts over to Dan Quinn saying, we knew that play was the most important play of the drive. You don't get a chance for the Hail Mary if you don't complete that pass in order to get close enough. So
Obviously, Dan Quinn really, you know, say what you want about him as a head coach, but he's one of the best
he's
defensive
not.
coaches of the last 15 years.
Yeah, and it's just you've been around for so long, and you just know that that's true. It's like having the ball at your own 35, 40, trying to throw a Hail Mary is a hell of a lot harder than getting it on the other side of the 50. And that's exactly what happened. Okay, that's one. Now you want to move up to the Green Bay Packer game. First time to beat the Packers in like 10 games, breaking that losing streak. You get into field goal range with about like 15 or so seconds. It's a long field goal range, but you're in it. And instead of trying to run another play to get closer, which they had plenty of time to do and plenty of means to do so, they decide to sit on where they're at, let the clock bleed down, and kick a longer field goal. And Matt Eberflus says, we didn't feel the need to get any more yards. What happens? The Green Bay Packers block the field goal. What happens when the media asked the Packers field goal block team what they were thinking during those moments? They said, when we saw them conceding to just kick the field goal where they were at and not try to get closer, we started licking our chops, knowing that their kicker kicks the ball low anyways. The fact that it was further, meaning he was going to have to kick it even lower than he usually does, we felt we had a pretty good opportunity to block the kick. And that's exactly what they did. They blocked the kick. Bears lost. Once again, coaching ineptitude. Fast forward again the following week against the Vikings, maybe not a specific moment that led to their total demise. You can't really pinpoint one exact moment, but what you can pinpoint is the fact that Caleb Williams led the team to a come from behind game and they get the onside kick, they kick the field goal to send it to overtime. They get the ball first in overtime and then they don't do anything with it, and they end up losing by giving up a walk-off field goal to the Vikings, and then we have what happens on Thanksgiving. All of this culminates into Matt Eberflus losing his job, yesterday morning, finally getting fired, Bears fans rejoicing, and now your new head coach is your interim offensive coordinator is now your interim head coach. Just total nightmare of a rookie season.
And you talk about failing up. That
Yeah, I
Thomas
mean,
Brown.
all of this points back to the fact that the Bears were extremely stupid to keep Matt Eberflus when they were drafting Caleb Williams at 1 because it's now the third quarterback in a row. I don't know how many times we have to keep saying it. John Fox was the head coach when they drafted Trubisky. After Trubisky's rookie year, they fired him and hired Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy was the head coach when they drafted Justin Fields. After Justin Fields' rookie year, they fired him and hired Matt Eberflus. Matt Eberflus, the head coach for Caleb Williams' draft. Not even after his rookie year, doesn't even make it his rookie year, they're firing Matt Eberflus, and they're going to start their head coaching hunt pretty soon for next season. It's just a recipe for disaster, ripping the coach that drafts you away from the rookie. Not that they're good coaches, but the fact that you're not starting someone with the quarterback to kind of grow into one. You're giving it to a coach that is really coaching for his job out of the gate. A coach that is not good is getting like a rookie quarterback, and it usually just leads to we're going to fire him anyways. And it's just stupid. It's just constant stupidity from this Bears organization, and it leads you to this point. And you know, the talk around Caleb Williams, I think, should be a lot more positive than negative. He's on pace for like 3,700 yards, 20 touchdowns, 7 picks, and the only other two rookie quarterbacks that hit those numbers, like that few interceptions, that many touchdowns, that many yards, is Justin Herbert as a rookie and C.J. Stroud as a rookie. So, really good company to be in.
Yeah,
The
the
coach,
problem. Yeah, the issue. Yeah, Caleb Williams is probably, I would say, like him, like Montez Sweat, and like Jalen Johnson are like the only bright spots of the Chicago Bears.
yeah, and
Um,
like they have guys like their defense has been playing fairly well. The Bears are 4-8. They haven't won since their bye week, and since the Hail Mary, they were 4-2
well, Michael,
entering that Washington game.
let's
Like, should they not at least be like at least 6-6, but perhaps 7-5 even? And then all of a sudden we're talking about the Bears in a wild card spot. Totally different light.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. I mean, we look at the Chicago Bears. So the Chicago Bears owner, Virginia McCaskey, is 101 years old. Not to sound ageist, Michael, but like, let's be realistic here. Like, how into, like, we talk about you look at the teams that are the most well run right now, their
Mhm.
owners are very good at hiring the right upper management to
To
run the
run their
team,
team.
to
Yeah.
run the teams, right? I read the story about how Clark Hunt, when the Eagles fired Andy Reid, Clark Hunt found out he was going to interview with the Titans or someone. I forget he was supposed to originally interview with. He actually gets on his private jet, flies to Philadelphia to catch Andy Reid before he left to go interview with them. To be like,
Mhm.
"Oh, hey Andy, this is Clark Hunt, the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. Would you like to be the head coach?" Just offers him the job at the airport.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you just
Like these
like
like
Yeah.
That's the problem with the Chicago Bears, Michael, is that they operate under George Halas's like thought processes on how to run a football team, which is draconian at best. Like
Yeah.
like Dick has said it, this like George Halas is one of the most important people in terms of like the NFL's history, right?
Hmm.
Like there wouldn't be an NFL without George Halas.
Right.
However, I mean, I think Mike Dick has said it best about George Halas. He, as an executive, he said George Halas tosses around nickels like they're manhole covers. They're cheap.
Hmm.
How much are they paying? Matt Eberflus probably like the lowest paid head coach in the NFL.
I
Probably, you
don't know.
think? You
Something
know,
like that. Yeah.
because now apparently Bears ownership has stated they want to spend money on hiring a head coach, which leads me to believe that they've just probably the reason they hire Eberflus, Nagy, John Fox, all these guys that are just not good head coaches. Is because
Hmm.
they just don't want to spend the money in hiring one. You
Yeah.
know,
And it just, it better change. Like, I saw a Bears fan tweet it, and it's definitely true. It's that this is their most important head coaching hire in their history. Might be one of the most important decisions in the history of the franchise because you got your guy in Williams. He's going to be very good, and you have the weaponry around him for him to succeed. You need to build out the offensive line, obviously, but it's like whoever you get as that next head coach needs to be the guy that's going to be alongside Caleb Williams the whole time. Like that, you need to find the perfect marriage for Caleb and the head coach quarterback in order to just thrive in its fullest form. You can't pick a guy that is like a so-so, maybe have a playoff run here or there, but after like 5 years, right when he signs that second contract, you're looking for a new coach or something like that. Like you really can't screw this one up if you're the Bears. Like
they're
this
going to
is
hire Bobby Slowick.
that would be screwing it up for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, on the Lions side, Michael, just so we can pick up the pace a little bit here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I texted you this. I think I texted you this. I said I am not afraid of this Lions team.
Listen, they're an interesting team because it's still a Jared Goff led team, and a Jared Goff led team has always had its ceilings, no matter how good everything else is, as we've seen with the Rams and even with the Lions themselves. They're still very, very good, and I do have my biggest worries are, you need to do your best to stop their run game early. You can't let them just start teeing off, getting these big chunk plays,
Yeah, but
8
that's what they
yards
were
of
doing.
Gibbs. Well, I listen, they were, and then they got kinda cute, like, they stopped going to their bread and butter, like, Jahmyr Gibbs and listen, Gibbs fumbled at, like, what, the 5-yard line on
Well,
Thursday?
I
And
would
then, like
say, yeah, I think we talk about fumble. Like if you talk about fumbles in the NFL, he got absolutely he got leveled.
no, it was a great play, I'm not saying it wasn't, but it's like, you throw another touchdown on the board Detroit's way, and obviously the score is not as close, that sort of
Oh,
thing.
and then they had the missed field goal where,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, like, so that
Jamison
game.
Williams was being a dodo head.
Yeah, and he taking a stupid penalty. Like, that game was there for the Lions to have blown out Chicago, and for whatever reasons, it didn't happen that way. So, I'm not, like, petrified, like, "Oh, there's no way they beat the Niners," or sorry, "There's no way they beat the Lions," but I do think that, you know, they can absolutely hang with them, and this is another game that the Lions have had a few games this year that they probably really, really should have lost, that they ended up getting the win, and when you're actually good and are capable of, like, beating up on bad teams and even beating up on some good teams, that doesn't matter as much, the way you get them at this point in the year, but, like, you look at the Vikings game, that was very, like, fluky the way they won. You look at the Texans game, you throw 5 interceptions and win. You look at Thursday where at least it should have probably been in overtime. That Cardinals game where a pick six got wiped off the board because of a 2-minute warning call that was probably wrong at the end of the first half for Arizona. So, there were games there to have been lost that they've managed to win all of those games I've mentioned and has led them to their very good record at the moment. But
It does seem when they play good teams, they barely win. But
they
when
play
they
good teams close.
but when they play these awful teams, they just run the score up on them.
Granted, they did dominate the Packers, even though that score is close. It was like 24-3 the first possession out of the third quarter. Like
I
that
mean,
was pretty
also
dominant.
too, Jordan Love was playing with a serious injury.
Well, the Packers
Like you
shot
saw
themselves in the
Jordan,
foot a
like we
lot.
saw Jordan Love Sunday night. Now he looks kind of healthy. He looks
It's a lot
much. I
better,
mean,
yeah.
he looks much
So,
better.
well, that is next week's game on Thursday. That is the biggest game of the Eagles season that they don't play in. That Packers game is huge. We need Green Bay to beat Detroit in order to allow the Eagles to have a tiebreaker if them and the Lions finish with the same record. That would have the common opponents tiebreaker favor the Eagles because the Eagles beat Green Bay, and then the Lions would have split Green Bay. And obviously, we'd have to also beat Dallas again to help confirm that. But regardless, yeah, second. So the Lions, took care of business. They got their win. That's all they really cared about. And the Bears, ultimately, probably a net positive result for the Bears that they were able to fire Matt Eberflus. First time in their long, long history that they fired a head coach midseason. So
Well, it's the first time. Yeah, you're right. It's the first time they ever made a coaching change
yeah,
mid-season.
yeah.
It's that old school philosophy. Like the last time the Steelers made like a coaching change mid-season. Um,
I mean, Steelers haven't made a coaching change period in quite some time. So
well, like it was when Burt Bell fired himself.
yeah, I mean the Eagles fired Chip Kelly midseason, and that was their first of their history. Correct, firing a
I
head
mean, it
coach
doesn't happen
midseason.
very often. It's
No, it
not.
doesn't happen, but it happens with the garbage teams for sure.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
the Bears have been a garbage team for a while. So
right. I do. So let's move on to our next game, which is the New York Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. Um, well, Michael, we all crack jokes about it. This game, they should have flexed this game to Earth Day, or like a smaller holiday, not
yeah,
Thanksgiving. I would say fair to say that after watching that game, I thought about a month ago, 6 weeks ago, Brian Dable, it'd be kind of unfair if he got fired. Um, there is just so much wrong with that Giants team that it might behoove all parties to just wipe the slate clean.
completely clean. Yeah, it was my thought process with the Giants. It's so tough because like this is year one of the regime, and like to just kind of totally abandon it would be difficult. Obviously, Dable's been there for a few years, but Shane, I, like, I really, as much as I do, and like we just talked about it with the Bears, bringing in a new head coach when you draft a rookie quarterback. And I'm not saying that Brian Dable is like a lame duck the way that these other Bears head coaches have been. But if you decide to keep Dable and you draft a rookie quarterback and you're seeing a lot of the same mistakes on the offensive side of the ball, you're gonna have no choice but to fire him, and then you just be as bad as the Bears, and that's totally like that's a disaster. It's not where you want to be. My only thought is that I really do think that Brian Dable is a good coach. I do think that he is capable of coaching and leading a good offense, and that I really hold a lot of what the Giants' limitations have been to the quarterback position, whether that be Daniel Jones, whether that's Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock or whoever it is. It doesn't matter. It's all been just slop. And what you get is slop. And I just think that it would be really difficult. Like it was just watching that hard knocks in the offseason, seeing Brian Dable do everything but get on his knees and beg for a new quarterback to Joe Shane. Like the amount of times they're going over the plan and then Brian Dable's like, so we're keeping like the same quarterback room basically as last year, and Joe Shane's like, yeah, and then Dave was just like, okay, like it's just he doesn't look he didn't look pleased at all anytime he kept hearing that Daniel Jones was going to be back as the starter and that whoever the backup was never going to be competitive enough to actually like take his job and you feel like you're in a good spot with that quarterback. Like Drew Lock or not, like you if Drew Lock's your starter for the whole season, you're not in a good place. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's how, Dable entered the season. Obviously, it got to the point where they've cut Daniel Jones. Yeah, it just feels like
Well, they
Dable
cut
could be
Daniel
good.
Jones, Michael, because they relegated him to the scout team and they had him playing reps at safety with the scout team. And as soon as
I
his
mean, that's
age,
happened before though. Like,
well, no,
remember
well,
Baker
Mark,
playing scout team?
what's
When
that?
he was in Carolina, Baker was playing on the scout team in Carolina when he got benched or whatever. Like, I think the third string quarterback just does it. It's just when there's a name,
But
you know.
but no, I think when he was lining up on the scout team, and then his agent found out they had him playing safety. Granted, it's not like Daniel Jones is coming up to lay the boom, like he's going to tackle
No, yeah,
someone.
it's just the guy out there.
It's the fact where it's like it's almost like they're almost devaluing him to a certain point, and if you're his agent, it's kind of like you need to get the hell out of there.
Yeah, they had the biggest reason why he got benched, like besides whatever, is the fact he had like an insurance policy in his contract that if he got hurt, the Giants like if he got hurt significantly, the Giants would have to pay him for like another season. Like his contract would get bigger if he got injured. So that's really the reason that they did sit him down. They were like, okay, God forbid this guy gets hurt and we're stuck with him for another year. And then everything, devolved and he very quickly got benched to then got cut. Um, and he's now on the Minnesota Vikings. Good for him. I think that's a good spot for him, honestly. Um, but
You know what's crazy about when them re-signing Daniel Jones
mm,
is they would have gotten if they had let him walk as a free agent, they would have gotten a third round pick for him, and they could have traded for a quarterback to replace him, like Lamar. Like Lamar was actually available, and they just were like, "No, we have Daniel Jones," and it's like
yeah,
it's to
yeah,
me.
that was every team basically. That was like Atlanta. That was a lot of teams that,
Well, that's another Garbo team, but
yeah, yeah. It just it
I
it
think
was.
my point. I think my you said Dable's still a good coach, and look, you saw what happened with Bill Belichick when he coached the Browns. He coached a complete dumpster fire,
Mhm.
left, went back to be a coordinator, got to be a head coach again, learned from his mistakes from the previous job. I think the big thing is going to be it's going to be kind of a hard sell for your team if you just be like, we're going to hire Brian Dable to be our head coach after the Giants are probably going to have the first overall pick.
Yeah,
That's
it's and
that's
it's
a
just
tough sell because then
you're
then you're like,
you're
let's
playing
just
with the same fire the Bears play with, and that's not what you
like
wanna
let's
be
say the
doing.
Bears hired Dable to be their head coach. Caleb Williams is going to be like, we're seriously hiring this guy, like
Yeah.
we're
No,
seriously hiring this dude.
if he gets canned, I think he definitely needs to be a coordinator first before he goes back to being a head coach, definitely. Um, but, like, I also don't think it'd be a bad idea to fire him when, there's clearly Malik Neighbors and him are not on the same page, at this point, the post-game interviews are not looking pretty, when he's saying, talk a ask Dabes, talk to Dable about why I don't get enough targets early in the game. He's still like, he leads the league in target share, so he gets a ton of targets, but he is right that they do all tend to come when the game's basically already over in the second half. He doesn't it's almost it's not that they're avoiding him early in the game, but maybe the other team is like, "All right, we need to take away neighbors early," and that cat and mouse, they're not really succeeding in getting him open. Regardless, probably wouldn't be the worst thing for the Giants to fire him and totally restart, and I think that might be what they end up doing. It's just totally you got rid of the quarterback, now just get rid of the coach and the GM, and we're a fresh slate, new era beginning, and
I
Kind
do.
of like what the Commanders did.
I mean, I do think. Yeah, I agree. Like that's probably what's best for everyone.
Yeah.
Joe Shane, though, I will say this: he's. I don't understand. I mean, them. Everyone's grilling them for letting Saquon go. Like, let's be real. Like, let's be unbiased, Michael. Saquon didn't want to go back there.
Like, I think he did. It was one of those things that, like, what I view this as genuinely is like, what if we talk about not to really camp, but what if Mike Trout got shafted by the Angels? You know what I'm saying? Like, what if when Mike Trout was discussing his extension with the Angels the first time, like all way back in 2020 or whatever it was, what if they gypped him with their contract offer? That he ended up getting what, like 12 years, like 480 or something like that. Like, what if they totally lowballed him? Like they offered him less than what Bryce got. Trout never wanted to leave the Angels, and they gave him money to accommodate what he wanted. They gave him a bunch of empty promises, and now he's there for the rest of his career. The Giants, were saying how much they want him, saying how much they want him, but then they wouldn't go over a certain number, and they kinda shafted him, and I think, why not run to the Eagles? Like, that was,
Well,
you
no, I
know,
think. Well, I think what with
because
the
I do think
Giants.
he
This is
wanted
the
to
difference.
stay.
Well, no, this is what happened was that Gettleman, who drafted him, loved Saquon.
Mhm.
He loved Saquon. When they had the second overall pick, they basically they the joke was that he ran out of the draft room with this card to hand it because he was that's how excited he was to draft Saquon Barkley because he was like, oh my god, he's the next Walter Payton, Ladainian Tomlinson, Barry,
Mhm.
whatever Hall of Fame caliber running back, right? And when Joe Shane came on board, it seems to me like Joe Shane just doesn't like any of these like Gettleman draft picks, except for Dexter Lawrence. He loves Dexter Lawrence. That's the vibe I get.
Yeah.
Everyone else, it's like when you get a new GM, they just don't like the old play. They want to get their players in. But
Yeah.
the problem with that is like the Giants last year. The Giants even sniff a playoff spot last year, Michael. If they knew they weren't going to re-sign Hutchinson or Saquon, why not just do what the Commanders did and just start unloading players, get draft picks? You need the draft picks to fill their you need because you need to build a roster.
Yeah. No, the Commanders did it right. The Commanders handled their fire sale well, and, say what we want about Dan Quinn and Kingsbury, their coaching staff, but it worked for a good part of the year, and, like, their schedule's still favorable, even though I don't love the way they're playing. They might still make the playoffs, and it's like they got
Yeah,
legitimate
I'd say the
pieces
only
here.
major mistake that the Commanders made was they enabled the Eagles to get Cooper DeJean.
Right. But it's just like they handled the teardown and the rebuild, like the last step of the teardown, the first step of the rebuild, they handled that pretty well. And the Giants are clearly in the middle of the process and are not handling it well. So
Well, it's because the issue was with the. So I wonder, Michael, do you think the Giants would have drafted Drake May if they didn't? If they had the third overall pick? Remember when they beat the Eagles, that cost them that pick.
I think they would have drafted a quarterback, whether it was Daniels, whether it was May, whoever it would have been, wherever they got, they were like it would have been Drake May would have been three because Daniels went two. Yes. Short answer, yes. I think they really wanted like, they show it in the show. They were calling the Patriots and, like, were trying to seriously discuss a trade, and the Patriots were basically like the Patriots asked for the moon. They were like, "Give us" obviously we swap, and it's like, "Give us, like, 2 more firsts and, like, 2 more second" like, they were asking for a ton of
Well,
draft
you know what's
capital for the
crazy?
Giants
If
to
you would
move
have
up a few
traded
spots.
Hutchinson and Saquon, like if you would have gotten a
What, McKinney, you mean, or Hutchin?
or McKinney, I mean, I'm not sorry, Xavier McKinney
Yeah.
and Saquon, you might have gotten all the enough draft capital
to make
along
that
with some
sort of
up your
move.
draft
Yeah.
capital to maybe get Drake May. Like that's
And
my
listen,
point.
maybe New England was never gonna move off, and they just knew the Giants didn't have the assets, so they were just throwing
Or
out
here's the
crap.
flip side, Michael. You get all this draft capital, extra draft capital, right? I don't know. What if like Joe Shane's like, man, you know what? I think Michael Penix might be pretty good. Or you know what? Maybe we'll drop back to like, I don't know, 8 or 9 or something, and then we'll draft Bo Nix.
Oh,
And we
I
don't
mean,
care, you
even
know.
even absent of making a quarterback move, if you really only wanted Drake May and, like, you were like, "Okay, we're not getting Drake May," you coulda had all that draft capital. Look what the Eagles did to go get someone like A.J. Brown. Like, you could have been in the Ayuk sweepstakes, and you go get Brandon Ayuk to pair along with, like, Malik Neighbors. Now all of a sudden, you got 2 really, really good wideouts that, whether it's Daniel Jones or a new quarterback next year, that a new quarterback's coming into with 2 really, really nice wideouts. You nailed Tyrone Tracy, he's a very good running back. Like, it's just though you could have further used those draft assets if you dumped Barkley when you did, if you dumped McKinney when you did, and built out the rest of the roster where you can slide in the quarterback, kinda like what the Bears did, and slide in the quarterback, and you're like, all of a sudden, now we have a nice little team here, and you could compete a little bit quicker than it's going to take if the Giants do end up finding the quarterback. Um,
Let's move, like moving
we've
on,
talked
like
a lot about not about the game because
yeah,
the game was
yeah,
not
because
entertaining.
the game was trash. I
It
mean,
was
look,
very boring.
the game was boring. I mean, listen, like look at the Dallas Cowboys. Um, I mean, look, uh, I don't know if they're going to go on a late season run. Uh,
No,
highly doubt it. I think they have no shot at the playoffs realistically.
no.
I know Micah Parsons was like, don't count us out or whatever
Mm,
beat.
okay, Micah.
I mean, I think if you're for the Eagles because we got we could be playing them for the first over to get we need to beat them to get the first overall seed. Um,
I
like
mean,
I
if the Eagles lose to a Cooper Rush, the Cowboys team, once again, they're in a lot bigger problems than the 1 seed.
I know. I think you would just prefer to get that
I
quote
don't care. It
unquote.
should not matter,
I mean,
and
I
you
think you
know
would
it
prefer
shouldn't
to get
matter.
that quote unquote double buy where you could rest your starters for a week and then it's like you're like 2 week.
That might be
That's the
pushing it, though.
classic Andy Reid double buy where it's
That's
like
that might be pushing it. It'll
I
be a
know,
hard task to
yeah, but
get into that spot.
dude, I think with the Cowboys, let's just ask this question, and I just want to. This is the only thing I think interesting to talk about the Cowboys. Do you think they're going to retain McCarthy if they like finish like 7-10, 8-9 with Cooper
Oh,
Rush?
like, if they win games? Yes. If they win games and they finish close to 500, I absolutely think Jerry Jones is gonna keep him and say, "You know what? Look how good he did with Cooper, as long as we get Dak healthy," and he'll just fall into the same trap because he's already laying the groundwork for him to be, like, thing. He's like, he's a Super Bowl winning head coach, like, I trust him a lot, and it's like, it's almost like you're already building in the excuses to not fire him. But the Cowboys in no way should keep him.
I
They're in
agree,
a
and like
huge dumpster.
and my list is kind of my last thing I want to maybe just ask you because I see this all over on Twitter, and of course everything on Twitter is true, Michael, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Is
Okay.
like the whole Michael Parsons wants to be an Eagle thing. I'm gonna be I'm gonna be just completely honest. I don't think I want Michael Parsons on this team from a locker room
Oh.
perspective. Like Michael
Oh.
Parsons, the player, hell yeah, I'd love like Michael Parsons, the player. But I feel like he just does not like he would just not fit well in Philadelphia.
No, you already talk about how much we talked about last week, how much people complain about Slay, for a guy that talks like a fraction of the amount that Micah Parsons talks out there. Like, Micah Parsons is there is I don't think there would be anything worse as a Cowboy fan, if I was a Cowboys fan, than to watch the Eagles get beaten d or watch the Cowboys get beaten down by the Eagles, and then have to see the notification the next day that hear Micah's thoughts on how Jalen Hurts has inserted himself in the MVP race, and it's like, are you shitting me? Like they go, you get beaten down by your division rival, and now my best player is on a podcast talking about how he thinks said division rival's quarterback is a top 5 quarterback in the league, or talking about how, how many more times does he need to tweet, "The Giants are so stupid for letting Saquon leave." Like, I'd be beside myself if that was a player on my team, and I don't want it. I don't want it. He's like, it's just, ugh. Every podcast clip I see with whether it's his teammates, someone across the league, every tweet I see from him, it's just it turns me off. I don't want him even a little bit. I know how good of a player he is, and I'm sure if there's any place that can figure all this crap out, it's the Eagles. But that contract he has to do that podcast with, like, it's like with Bleacher Report or whatever, like, that's like Michael Rubin affiliate, like, that's serious stuff. That's not getting shut down when he comes here. Like, it's not gonna be like, "Oh, we're canceling the Micah podcast." Like, no, that is him for the rest of his career. Like, he's going to be doing that unless he straight up personally says, "I don't wanna do it anymore," which is not the case. He loves hearing himself talk. I I do not want I really don't. I don't want him here. I'm sure he'll be a great player, but I can't have him here so
He would be a
constantly
great
and
Charger.
talking ab sure, and it's just him, like, talking about all the other players in the league at the whole all the time, and it's just constant.
Why I think Mahomes is better than Brady
That's what I'm
after they
saying,
lose to the
like,
Chiefs.
when they do their quarterback ranking and, like, they don't even mention their own quarterback in the 8 quarterback names that they drop, and it's like, I don't
Oh,
know,
I can't wait to talk about the Texans when we do the
yeah,
picks. Sorry,
yeah,
keep going.
like, I can't have I can't have that even a little bit. So no, I do not want Micah Parsons for those reasons, and maybe that's wrong of me, but I don't. He is a great player though. Had another good game, but yeah, that game did suck. So
Let's do the,
on to the
the
night game.
yeah.
The Packers and the Dolphins went basically exactly how you could have predicted it to have gone. Tua in the cold, Dolphins in the cold, once again showing that they can't handle it, that they're a very, very soft team. Starts with the head coach for sure. I do like Mike McDaniel. I think he's got good ideas, but I do think he's probably he may a little too cute for what he tries to do sometimes. You have a fullback on the roster and you have goal to go at the one, and it's like he's not getting the ball or he's not even on the field, like you're in shotgun. It's just dumb stuff like that. It's a soft team. It's a soft culture. It bleeds in that, when you get below 60 degrees, Tua starts getting worse. You get below 50, he's terrible. You get below 40, and it's like you have zero chance to win. And that's what you had in a little flurry on Thursday night in Lambeau. It's it's really fascinating that even while the Dolphins have been playing some pretty good football since he got back from his concussion, and it looked like they were creeping back in to a playoff race and perhaps gonna sneak into a playoff spot, they just remind you why there's never a reason to believe in the Dolphins, no matter what they do from September until the beginning of November, because as the end of November rolls around and definitely into December, they're just gonna do the same thing every year and come up small and showcase that they're not serious enough to win, and a lot of it has to do with the quarterback. They're a soft team, soft culture, and, you know, I can vividly remember a conversation we had on this podcast when the Eagles hired Vic Fangio, and we talked about how the Dolphins players were saying how they really didn't mesh well with Vic Fangio, and that I remember saying, maybe he is just some old man that yells at a cloud, and I don't
Oh,
know
he
if it's the
is.
right hire for the Eagles. Like, he's just a total ass and might not be, maybe they need to get their head screwed on straight, but if it doesn't blend well with the players, it'll go bad fast. And I thought he was a guy that couldn't get on the same page with players today. And I couldn't have been more wrong. The Dolphins are just a straight up soft team that could not handle a hard coach. And we're seeing it continue into this year while we watch the Eagles employ one of the best defenses in football. So Yeah, really,
I so this is so
really
this is kind of
interesting.
this is my so this is my take on the Dolphins. So yeah, the main guy that critiqued the Dolphins, or Vic Fangio, excuse me, was Javon Holland, Pro Bowl safety. He said,
Right.
talked a lot of crap about um, Vic Fangio, and then I think Tyreek Hill kind of stood up for Vic Fangio. He's like, Vic's a good coach. It's just that I think at a certain point we knew that he didn't really want to be here. He wanted to be with the Eagles. So it was kind
Well, I
of,
mean, he realized that the team was soft, and he was like, "I don't want to be here. I'd rather just coach near my house."
which
Like,
I can understand that.
listen,
You
the
know,
Eagles are getting very fortunate. They're getting kind of what Spags is to the Chiefs, where it's here's a guy that's does not want to be a head coach anymore, and he's probably not leaving. So
well, so
as long as he's coaching, we got him. So it's good.
this is my take though. This is on the Dolphins. I think part of their issue is that they play in Miami and a lot of players. There's no like culture of winning, is what I'm saying. Is that a lot of guys want to go there to build their brand.
To
They're in
live in
South
Miami,
Beach. It's like that and Las Vegas are the main like influencer cities,
in LA
and
too, you know.
in LA, and they just want to be there to build their brands. Which, hey, look, if you're a player, hey, go ahead, make more money. Like that's I'm not critiquing you for that, but like you draft guys or you bring guys in because they want to be part of a winning culture, not for just purely financial reasons.
Right.
That's the issue with the Dolphins. Like Tyreek Hill has really did a 180 in terms of his public image, I think, with the Dolphins compared to the Chiefs. Like, if he was with the Chiefs, everyone talked about how much of a bad guy he is and how much of a scumbag he is, probably because he's on the Chiefs and a lot of people just dislike
I
them.
mean, listen, he's got legitimate crimes against him that are pretty terrible.
And now he's on the
Yeah,
Chiefs, and then he gets pulled over by the cops, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, police brutality, poor
yeah,
Tyreek."
Miami. No, yeah,
Like
it's
that's what I mean. Like it's sort of like and you look at the like McDaniel. Oh my God, Mike McDaniel's this young coaching phenom. But like it's like oh my God, I'm gonna sound like such a boomer. It's like kind of what Dan Lanning said about Colorado. They play for clicks, we play for wins. They're
yeah.
play,
Oh,
they're play,
yeah.
they're playing for clicks essentially, and that's why they lose every single big game they're in.
Yeah, no, they if they lose and they usually get embarrassed. They don't lose these games close, you know, playoff games, they get 'em blown out. Big games down the stretch of the season, they're getting blown out, and they got blown out again on Thursday, and listen, the Packers are playing very good football, and they looked good, but, like, the Dolphins going into that game, like, if you took that game out of Lambeau and, like, put it on a neutral, at least, or even just in Miami, I'm not saying the Dolphins win the game, but it's definitely significantly closer than what it was. Like, it's just the fact that they can't even get over the weather hurdle and they can't get into their stuff consistently on offense because of the weather. Like, it's such a bad sign. You look all the good teams in the AFC play in the cold, you know, the Chiefs,
Yeah.
Buffalo, Baltimore. They're all cold weather teams, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati. You want to go on a run, you got to go play through that cold. And it's never gonna happen, and the sooner they realize that their quarterback should probably just go retire, would be
Dude, ever
beneficial for
since
them.
he hit
Because
factory reset or his last
yeah, he's
concussion,
been playing
he's
better.
well,
Like,
no, he looks completely like his like mentality is different. He's like
yeah, it's a CTE, that early onset CTE is kicking in. He's getting all abrasive with the media. He's very
I thought it was
quick.
more of a he's just trying to be a tough guy because people think I think people thought he was soft at Alabama, and
Yeah, and then people started feeling bad for him for his concussions, and I think he's overcorrecting, like, "Oh, don't feel bad for me. I'm tough." And it's like, "No, you're just an idiot." Like, you're literally just an idiot. Like, you throw an interception and you throw your head at the dude's knee to make the tackle, and he's like, "Oh, I just shouldn't have thrown the pick." It's like, "All right, man, you could also probably have just not thrown your head into that." Like, you're just a dumbass. And as far as, like, to fix Miami, it's like you might have to just fire Mike McDaniel, which is it's definitely gonna be a hard thing to
no,
do.
you don't fire Mike McDaniel. But what you really need to do You know who would I think would be really good to help Mike McDaniel would be if you got him some like I think you should fire the GM and keep Mike McDaniel.
So what do you need? What do you need? Like a veteran offensive coordinator?
I
But
think
like
like
he's not gonna call plays, a
I think
vet
some just
OC.
better I
Like
think some veteran coaches just to help Mike McDaniel out. Like remember when McVay when he first got to the Rams, he hired oh god, Wade Phillips.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Like Wade
Yeah.
Phillips really helped Sean McVay because McVay was kind of like McDaniel, where he's like, oh, this uberly over enthusiastic,
No,
like
yeah, it
young head
was
coach, and he's just
yeah.
kind of like would just help him out with like just some things. He cause, like he knew that like he was an angle like another guy that had no interest in being a head coach.
Yeah, you gotta find a guy that doesn't have interest to being a head coach, and if it's gonna be an offensive guy, I wouldn't mind not calling the plays, but you just need their, like, voice and their presence, and I'm not sure who that is, really, it's hard to find, but, yeah, I think it would go a long way for them. Green Bay played well, even with some injuries, Jaden Reed is such a little gadget weapon for them to be really well. Josh Jacobs are leaning on well. Listen, we need they play at Detroit on Thursday next week. So that's the biggest game of the year, like I said, for the Eagles not playing in one. That win goes a long, long way for the tiebreaker. It puts the Eagles if that win happens on Thursday, the Eagles all of a sudden control their own destiny. So, really big rooting for the Packers this week, but we'll see.
And then we
Anyways,
got to talk about
Black
oh
Friday.
boy,
Oh boy. This is a classic. Very normal Chiefs win against the Raiders. Um, it started looking out early that the Chiefs were like they moved the ball really well on their first couple drives. Their defense was playing well. Felt like it might have been a rout on the verge, but the Chiefs have issues, man. They have some legit issues. The Raiders, they're hitting some big plays. Brock Bowers had a crazy statistical day. They had a nice return to help set up to get points. The Raiders did shoot themselves in the foot. They missed 3 field goals, and then whatever in God's name happened at the end of that game,
yeah.
botching
Well,
that
everyone said it was
situation.
the NFL rigged the game, but in actuality, because so within 2 minutes, if you committed the penalty that the Raiders did, that's actually an illegal shift, not a false start.
Yeah, no, it was an illegal shift. I know it wasn't a false start. Like, it was an illegal shift because the the Raiders weren't set. Like, the play clock was winding down, the guard tapped the center to snap the ball, the receivers were still jogging to their spots, like, they weren't ready yet. So, illegal shift, illegal formation, whatever it was, there were just players moving that never got set, so that's not a false start. Um, Even had the Raiders have recovered it, since it wasn't a false start, that would have been a 10-second runoff because the clock would have been running, and then the game would have ended anyways, so total just botching of the Raiders situation. They missed 3 kicks too. You lose by 2 points, you miss 3 kicks. I don't know what you're supposed to do. The Chiefs have issues though. They're the big
Yeah, but didn't we say this last year and they won the Super Bowl?
they have worse issues because their defense is not as good as last year. It's more inconsistent. Their pass rush is not as consistent.
And that's
So
a
then
good.
they're
I'm glad you said that because the
yeah,
observation I have with the Chiefs blitzes was that last year they could just dial up blitzes and the coverage was good enough where the quarterback would just get sacked or
yeah.
you know
Yeah, when their secondary is not as good this year. Losing L'Jarius Sneed was a legitimate loss for them, and, you know, McDuffie's been good, but it hasn't been, like, super lockdown since he moved to the outside, and the rest of their D-backs are just they're solid, it's
I
just
have a
not
take on Chris Jones. I'm sorry, but
yeah,
make your
but it's their pass rush is inconsistent. When their pass rush lands, it's great, it's unstoppable, but if it doesn't get home, you were watching Aiden O'Connell drop, bombs down the field and hitting receivers and stuff like that. So it's like if he can do it, all the other really good AFC quarterbacks can do it. And it starts with their defense because their defense is really what helped them, would push them to win the Super Bowl last year. And again, it's a good defense now, but it's not nearly as good. They give up over 400 yards. Like it's not nearly as good as it was last year. I do have a take about their offense, but I'll let you get your Chris Jones opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Jones is obviously going to be a Hall of Fame D tackle, probably
Hmm.
first ballot. Obviously, he's the most important person on the Chiefs defense. Michael, I think just kind of like you notice kind of how they always were like having those contractual issues in the past.
Hmm.
I think it's kind of like I think he's hitting the Fletcher Cox end of career stage. He's about to begin that where they need to rotate him out, or else he's just going to lose his effectiveness near the end of games.
Hmm.
And you kind of saw that where he's not the Aaron Donald like game wrecker like at the end of games because they just don't have any depth on their D line to rotate.
Yeah. I mean, listen, in the Super Bowl, he was wrecking the game, and he still has the capability to wreck the game. But like you
Well,
said,
he yeah, I mean, I'm not saying he can't do that. It's just sort of like you mentioned, like there
he can't
is
as consistently do it. He's not doing it at will, like every single snap
like he should
anymore.
have did it against the Panthers last week. He didn't do it against the Raiders this week. So he's either A, saving it for the playoffs, which hey, you know, fine, they're winning games regardless. Or like we see this happen a lot is older players that get overused when they get to the playoffs, they're sucking wind, they're worn out. They've played like think about all the extra games that like Chris Jones has played in because of all the Chiefs playoff runs.
Yeah, listen, for 30-year-old D lineman, the 30
Tackled
tends to
another
be that
season
age.
onto his body. It's not the years, it's the mileage.
Yeah, so and it's a lot of mileage. And listen, there's a reason Aaron Donald retired when he retired at only like what, like 32 years old or something like that. Like it just, you know, it's just the way it goes.
Like Aaron Donald, one of the most physically fit players in the
Yeah,
NFL.
freak of a human, exactly. So the Chiefs, when their pass rush is there, their defense feels as good as it is. But when it's not, and you really got to rely on the D backs to hold up, that's when things don't go well for them. And then flipping to the other side of the ball, the Chiefs' biggest issue is their offensive line and like mainly their tackles. Their tackles
Mm.
stink. Whether it's Jawan Taylor or whoever's on the other side, it's been a mix of a couple guys because of some injuries. They stink. They're straight up bad. They get beat a lot. They get beat consistently, or they're taking penalties. They're killing them like absolutely.
They're falling under the fallacy of like, hey, we keep winning championships. Why do we need to improve this part of the team?
Yeah, no, and they, I think they hoped Jawan Taylor would be better, and he's just not. But like Mahomes is getting frustrated too, and it's happening against every team where like if he wants to just drop back and trust the pocket to kind of just throw a ball, if he's getting beat, like um like if the tackles can beat pretty quickly, like he's just getting like absorbed. It's why it feels so common this year
Wow.
with Mahomes. Oh, what? What do you got?
So you mentioned the Chiefs tackle performance. Now, Joe Tunney, all
Yeah.
pro guard. They had to
Mhm.
move him to left tackle because that's how bad they are at left tackle.
We yeah, like that's what we're doing here. And it's like it feels like every big Chiefs play that happens this year, it's normal Mahomes thing where he's on the run, he's escaping, and it's almost like it's pre-planned where he's taking the snap and he's like, I got a bad feeling that one of my tackles is getting beat here. I got to be ready to move. I can't just sit back here like a telephone pole and hope I have all the time in the world. And it's just that'll do you in against a good team. I don't like I'm calling the people everyone's saying Chiefs are just the 2023 Eagles. I don't think they are because their coaching isn't on the same level.
I think I
Like,
sent you the same. I think
yeah,
I just
I said it. We had the conversation. I had the conversation with Nick. I had the conversation with my dad. I have a conversation with everybody. They're not the same as the Eagles last year because perhaps Matt Nagy is about as bad as what the Eagles were employing as their coordinators and coaching staff last year. But, like, Spagnuolo we
But
know isn't bad,
but Nagy
and
answers to Andy Reid. That's the thing.
exactly, it's still an Andy Reid-led thing. The issue, I think, it's really is mostly with their players. Oh, sorry, 1 second. It is really mostly with their players. Like, they're not the same because it's not so deeply rooted that they have to tear down the entire thing in the off season in the from a coaching standpoint to try to get themselves back on track for 2025. Like, it's just a down year. It's a hard thing to do to three-peat. It's why it's, so been chased for so many years to have that many deep playoff runs. You get worn down. Sometimes you're just gonna get bounced. You're not gonna have a great year. And if they were just losing a bunch of these close games instead of winning all of them, no one would be saying anything other than like, man, like that's just the fatigue setting in for the Chiefs. Like they were due for all these losses, but now everyone feels the need to compare everything all the time. So it's like, oh, they're just this year's Eagles. Like they're just 2023 Eagles all over again. It's like they're really not. Like they might lose some games towards the end of the year or whatever, but
I
they're not going to
do I do think
collapse and, you
yeah,
know.
I do think for the Chiefs though,
I
and
do think yeah, go ahead.
I do think though we're going to see more balance in the AFC. This is very similar to this is basically the comparison I have. This is like one of those like non Super Bowl Brady seasons where like they're going to go to like the AFC title game and like lose by like 10, 14 points to like the Broncos led by Peyton Manning or like the Ravens where like Joe Flacco is playing out of his mind,
Yeah.
or the Colts when they had Peyton
So
Manning.
so you're thinking they're still going to win a couple playoff games or at
I
least
think that, I
one.
mean at this rate, I mean they're gonna get they could get the first overall seed again, even though they lose the
I think
tiebreaker to the
yeah.
Bills. The
I
Bills
think they're
don't
going
have
to
an
get
easy
the
schedule
No, I think they're gonna get the 1 seed, Kansas City, and I think they're gonna lose to the first legitimate team that they play. Like, the way I think the playoffs in the
at
AFC is gonna
home.
shake out yeah, I think the way the playoffs are gonna shake out is it's gonna be Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, Houston, and then, like, Pittsburgh, Chargers, and then either, like, the Broncos or maybe the Colts sneak in, like, some one of those teams. I think the 5 seed is gonna beat the Texans, and then it's gonna be a 3-6 for Baltimore versus the Chargers, and it's gonna be either the Chargers they play or they're gonna play the Steelers, and it's one of those 2 teams, and I think both of those teams are serious enough to
Has Andrew Reid ever
play.
lost to Tomlin?
I'm sure. I mean, I don't know, but I'm sure.
Let's look it
I
up.
just
Mike Tomlin. Sorry, keep going for a
Yeah,
second.
so I think the Steelers or sorry, I think the Chiefs are gonna lose to the first serious team they face, and I think the Steelers and Chargers fall in that category of a team that can go on the road, play good defense, and, you know, get after the quarterback to not allow their offense to ever feel like they can get into a rhythm, and then be able to take advantage of the Chiefs' deficiencies on defense to score just enough, and I think they get knocked out by the first legitimate team that they play. I think if they are fortunate enough that the 7-seeded Broncos or the 7-seeded Colts or something, um, are knocking off the 2 seed and the Chiefs get to host one of them, yeah, I think they win, and I think there's a chance that they still can beat the Steelers or the Chargers per se, or even the Texans, but if they play Buffalo or if they play Baltimore in the playoffs, I do think that they end up losing, and I think there's a good chance they lose to the Chargers or the Steelers as well. And it's nothing more than just like this team was never good enough to three-peat. They needed a lot of things to break their way to three-peat, and you're seeing it already in the regular season, how many things need to break their way to even get to this point of their record in the regular season.
Yeah, I
Their offensive line is it's a big issue because you're looking DeAndre Hopkins looks good. He looks like he's built a nice rapport with Mahomes. Kelsey, this is as good a regular season as Kelsey's had in a few years. And picking up Kareem Hunt off the street when Pacheco went down, their running game was still pretty good, and they just got Pacheco back. Like, it's their offensive line at opportune times on
I
3rd
have
downs and
this
stuff, they're
feeling they're
getting
going to
beat.
get like some official. I think so. This is the last I'll just talk about the Chiefs, and we'll move on to the picks.
Yeah.
The I think with a lot of these penalties, and by the way, last night was a legitimate penalty, right?
Yeah.
That was legitimate. We talk about like Patriots aura, well, they had Brady, and then there's Chiefs aura, where a lot of these are their opponents just self destruct
Yeah,
end
it's
games,
true.
get
It's
away from what
true.
they're doing to get to their like last week when they played the Panthers. The Panthers were blitzing the hell out of Mahomes the whole game. They were getting home. They were getting a lot of success. And then what do they do on the final drive, Michael? They're playing soft zone.
Yeah, they're trying to yeah, it's just dumb. It's dumb, and they
And they
do
look at
it.
last night like that illegal shift. Like that's just like that was just pure
The illegal
stupid.
shift, but you missed 3 field goals. Like, it's a hard game to miss 3 field goals and win, and you lose by 2.
Like when the Eagles and the Giants knocked off the Patriots in the Super Bowl, they played almost like perfect games. They were just
They
like
took it they took it to the Patriots. They played perfectly in different ways. Like, the Giants' strategy was obviously, "We're getting after Tom. We're not letting him breathe. We're not giving him a second to feel comfortable," and they took an undefeated team that was one of the best offenses ever and held them to 14 points. And they took another iteration of an incredible offense led by the greatest, quarterback and held it to 17 points. The Eagles took the opposite approach of our offense has been our bread and butter all season. We're going to continue to be aggressive and we're going to put the pressure back on them and score, 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 score. And they just kept scoring and scoring and scoring and scoring. Defense broke through. All they had to do was make one play. They made one play, won the Super Bowl. Like, it's just they didn't get away from themselves. Doug didn't coil up and not go for it on a 4th down or wasn't aggressive in a spot. And the Giants didn't all of a sudden decide to sit and drop 8 in coverage and rush 3 at Brady and, not do anything. Even when Denver would beat them in the playoffs with Manning, what was the big reason why they would beat New England? It would be Von Miller and that pass rush just wreaking havoc on Brady and holding the Patriots to, like, you know, 13 points for 3.5 quarters. Like, just getting you beat them by doing what you're good at and trusting what you're good at and not overthinking yourself. Whereas we watched Baltimore last year in the AFC title game not run the ball, and the Chiefs' run defense was atrocious all year, and they didn't run the football. They tried to just constantly throw, and it got them in a spot where they couldn't add more points, and they just choked the game away. So, we'll see, like, if we'll see how these playoff teams handle Kansas City when the time comes around, if they start getting away from what they do
I think
well, and
Baltimore knocks them off.
maybe, yeah, I think there's a good chance that happens. I There's a part of me that wants the Chargers to do it, and I think they would have to probably get the 5 seed in
I
order
don't
to
know if
do
Herbert
so.
has it in him. You see how he's performed in second halves of games.
Ah,
That is literally like where the Chiefs win these games is in the second half.
well, I wanna see it. I wanna see it happen. It would
Like
be
I want to see it too, but I just man, I don't know. I don't know. I'm a little doubtful. But what
mhm.
I'm not doubtful in is our picks. Michael, do you have our most up to date record of our picks?
I do have our most up-to-date record of our picks, so I was looking at years past, and, like, I've done a lot better as the years gone on, and this year, I'm doing excellently this year. So I am 102, 63, and 3 on our picks against the spread. John, you had a nice week last week. You are 79, 86, and 3. You had some downers early and mid into the season. There was a few rough ones. There was One was not good. Yeah, it was week 7. We almost went inverse. I went 10-4, you went 3-11. Yeah, it was all the close games went the other way for you. It was just tough. So, you're on an upswing though. You're on a little heater, I would say, to get back into 500 range, which is where you want to be with this. This is not easy. It always falls on the number, it's always
Yeah.
picking against the spread. But into the picks we go, into Sunday's action. We're going to open up with the Washington Commanders at home against the Tennessee Titans. So the Titans are 6-point underdogs in Washington. The Commanders, it feels like the Kingsbury stuff's real. I think it was very fair for people to say, let's wait and see how they handle the bad teams coming up on their schedule. Because if your offense struggles against the Steelers and the Eagles, which are two incredible defenses, not the end of the world. But let's see how they handle, say, Dallas at home. And they got dominated for basically the entire game. That end of the game was beyond insane. Kick returns, long touchdowns. It was ridiculously stupid, and then it all culminates in a missed extra point because the Commanders' kicker Austin Seibert was just definitely not healthy. He missed the previous 2 weeks. They activated him. He missed a kick earlier in the game. All his kicks looked ugly. Like he was just never healthy, and misses the extra point and they lose. So all the
That was
stats
a
were kind
very
of
Josh
inflated.
Harris owned team like loss, by the way.
Yes, there all those stats got very, very inflated, and it feels like the Kingsbury stuff's pretty true. And the Titans' defense is legit. They have their two D tackles are very, very good. Devondre Sweat and Just
Simmons,
Simmons, not Justin. What's his
Jeffrey,
first name? Jeffrey Simmons. They are very, very good, and
Harold
their
Landry's pretty
secondary,
good.
yeah, their secondary's held up well. The Titans, no matter how bad they are, their defense always seems to really figure it out about halfway through the year and become like almost an elite unit for the rest of the season. So I'm taking the Titans +6, man. I can't trust this Commander team to do enough offensively to get out to a big enough lead and feel comfortable covering a 6-point spread. Like the
I like.
Titans might
I
sneaky
agree
win
with you,
this
Michael.
game.
I'm going to go with the Titans as well, but for a different reason.
Hmm.
The Titans have kind of found somewhat of an identity on offense where it's a more of a run first. Let's take advantage of our strengths
Hmm.
and make it to help Will Levis.
Yeah,
Listen, I think we both agree we don't think Will Levis is
good.
the guy, the quote unquote the guy,
Yeah,
but he looked good against the Texans. He just, Levised it up with that pick six, but he came back from it. I don't, like you want to see your quarter,
he's been bouncing back and battling.
and like Tony Pollard looks like the 2022 Tony Pollard.
Yeah, he looks good. He looks good for sure.
That, and I think, well, all like the Giants like false positivity where they're trying to claim that Tyrone Tracy's as good as Saquon. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think Tony Pollard right now. I don't know them letting Henry go because Henry wanted to move on. They bring in Pollard. I think that is working out for them.
Yeah,
You know,
it's that's not why they're not winning. You know what I'm saying?
no. Now on
Yeah.
the Commanders, you brought up a good point with the Cliff Kingsbury thing. Listen, the Titans are a physical, run first type team. We know how bad the Commanders' run defense is. Saquon
Mm.
Barkley ran all over them. Rico Dowdle
Ran all
ran all
over them.
over them.
Yeah.
They're just their linebackers aren't very good. I mean, they have 35-year-old Bobby Wagner.
Right.
He looks cooked. You know, is Lattimore playing in this game?
He practiced for the first time as a commander this week. I don't know. Like I wouldn't expect him to. Like he just I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know how much of a difference it makes to be honest right now. Like I really I just don't trust that commander's offense even a little bit. So
All right, you want to go over next game?
Yeah. All right. Next game we have is the Los Angeles Chargers in Atlanta to take on the Falcons. The Falcons doing a bit of spiraling of their own. This line has swung. The Chargers are now a 1 point favorite on the road. Um, the Falcons need a win, man, in the worst way because the Buccaneers are coming on their heels and the Falcons are coming off two pretty ugly losses. In New Orleans, then in Denver getting hammered. And they got a tough schedule. Home Chargers, at Vikings, at Raiders, which should be nice in theory, home Giants, which is nice. Like they finish on the easier side, but the next two games are massive, massive, where it feels like they could definitely lose the next two games and then potentially win the last four to save themselves. This is a tough spot though. They're coming out of their bye. They just I don't love that defense, and I feel like the Chargers coming off the loss that they did against Baltimore, really gonna be
No
kinda
J.K. Dobbins. I think
yeah.
I do like Gus Edwards for a rushing touchdown, though.
Yeah, probably, and the Chargers, I think they're a good team, and I'm not saying they're gonna catch Kansas City or anything by that stretch. Obviously, it's very far-fetched at this point, 3-loss difference. However, the Chargers can definitely add some pressure by winning some of these games, and all of a sudden, if the Chiefs falter once or twice, you're looking at they can't rest their starters at the end of the regular season because 'cause they're pushing for
Well,
that
I
bye.
do think for the Chargers, though. I mean, granted, Jim Harbaugh is most likely going to be the coach of the year.
Him or Sean Payton, I think.
Um,
Maybe Kevin O'Connell if the Vikings win, like, 13 games.
uh, he's in the running.
He's a very
He's in the
high
running, right?
candidate, yes.
Dude, isn't this the time of year when the Chargers, charger it up and just start choking games?
Yeah, no, this is
Like this
about that
feels
time.
like on paper you go Chargers all the way because the Falcons are spiraling. You know, Kirk Cousins is banged up. Like you said, their defense is.
Uninspiring, but it's the perfect time for their bye week too, Atlanta. It's good for them.
This Charger defense, though, like I mean, I don't know, man. Like they we're talking about like if Quentin Johnson just did not have stone hands, that they could have knocked off the Ravens.
Yeah, or got in a position to tie a game, you know? Totally dropped the drag route. He could have taken for like 30 yards.
Yeah, I don't. Are you going with the Chargers?
I'm going with the Chargers. I'm taking the Chargers. I trust what they got going on over there. They got some good cooking up, and I like how they play.
Yeah, I'm going with the Chargers as well. I'm kind of the Falcons. I think have beaten the Buccaneers both times this year, if I'm not mistaken.
I have their schedule pulled up. Yes, they have.
So they own the tiebreaker
Head
on
to head, and they'll probably own the divisional tiebreaker with that as well.
right, and yeah, yeah, I'm going to go with the Chargers as well.
Yeah. Next team we have probably the game of the early window, the 1 o'clock window. We have the Steelers and the Bengals. The Bengals, they keep losing in some pretty brutal, unimaginable ways as well. Their offense is certainly a lot better than their 4-7 record, but their defense might be worse than their 4-7 record, if we're being honest. The Bengals, though, are 3 point favorites at home against the Steelers. Steelers not getting any love from Vegas.
Well, I don't think they factor in devil magic into
Yeah,
the spread.
it's interesting. The Steelers, they're playing good football. They're currently in first place in the AFC North, and like they're they won a home playoff game. They'd much rather be the 3 seed hosting, whoever that may be, as opposed to having to go on the road to go play Baltimore or something like that. So they have a lot to play for. The Bengals are playing for their playoff lives. I'm actually going with the Bengals. I'm taking Cincinnati -3. I think the Steelers are one of those teams, how they manage to get to right around 500 every year or whatever, and every now and again they have a better, pretty comfortably better than 500 season, and this is probably that. But after that loss to Cleveland, and then you look at the rest of their schedule, they play at the Bengals tomorrow, home against the Browns, at the Eagles, at the Ravens, home against the Chiefs, home against the Bengals. That's a brutal end of the season, and I think that Browns loss was a bit demoralizing for them because none of those games I just mentioned are games that you can just say, "Oh yeah, that's a win for Pittsburgh." You can't feel comfortable about it, and I think that's gonna bleed a little bit. They tend to win games they shouldn't, I mean, and lose games that they should, and yeah, so I'm taking Cincinnati. I think this is a game that I think the Bengals are really gonna heat up that AFC wildcard race. I do think they're gonna go on a run where their defense is doing just enough to allow them to win some games, and all of a sudden they're gonna be right on the doorstep of making the playoffs.
Joe Burrow in his career against the Steelers is 3-2, 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions.
Yeah.
Um, I think what really hurts Cincinnati this year, besides their defense being cheeks, but we talk about their inability, the Bengals'
Well, they
inability
got bad
to
coaching too.
retain talent as well, is definitely played into why their defense is bad. Like besides Hendrickson, like I don't even know if what other good defensive players they have that can like impact a game. They really don't.
No, they let a lot of them walk. DJ Reader and Jesse Bates, they let good players leave.
Joby Awuzie.
Yeah, and
So
that's what
I
you
don't.
get.
So I mean, do you? I feel like when they keep putting these lines out, the Bengals are favored every week. Like the Bengals were favored over the Eagles at one point, Michael. Like everyone just keeps and no one's taking the bait this week. I'm going. I'm going to go with the Bengals. I'm going to tell you why I'm going with the
Oh,
Bengals. I Russell Wilson. They've been winning games with him. Is he a better quarterback than Justin Fields? Like, yeah.
yes,
Like,
definitely.
yeah. But man, one thing I noticed about the Steelers, and you saw it in that Browns game, is their O line is just not very good.
Yeah.
And I also think that, dude, like I see it every year with like Najee Harris. I feel like the end of this every season, we're just like, bro, like, why do the Steelers just keep featuring Najee Harris in their
Mhm,
offense? Like they don't have like I don't know, they're just meh, you know.
mhm.
And listen, T Higgins is looking for a massive contract. I could. This looks. I think Mr. Higgins is going to have a very strong month of December. Is going to get a fat contract from someone.
Yeah. He's the Bengals security blanket. He seems to almost out target, Jamar Chase pretty much every week. He's the guy that Burrow needs a completion for, like, 6 yards. He's looking at T. Higgins first, for sure. He's the reliable hands, physical receiver that can really muscle and break a tackle to get some extra yardage. Like he's the reliable security blanket that can also take the top off your defense. That's why he's so good. Um, but yeah, all right, both on the Bengals there. Next game we have the Colts and the Patriots. The Colts have been playing. Anthony Richardson has been playing better football since the benching. And what an interesting stat was. This is a 2.5 point spread, by the way. The Colts are 2.5 point road favorites. Interesting stat, it was like he went, what, 1 of 14 when he was pressured against the Lions last week, something ridiculous, but he took no sacks. He didn't get sacked once against
The hard guy
Detroit.
to stack.
Hard guy to sack, but earlier in the season, he was getting just sacked a lot, and I think it was kinda what people were saying Caleb Williams needs to start doing is because he was taking a lot of sacks. It's that, like, teams when you're in, like, the growing stages of your young quarterback and you're not really trying to super compete yet, you're really still trying to get the development stages going, it's okay to throw maybe a couple interceptions here and there as opposed to just taking sacks, because sometimes you just need to try just to see if things are gonna go like, pressure's coming. Not saying to just throw it up into triple coverage or something like that, but you see a blitz coming, and if you don't have, like, a hot route to get it out to, take your one-on-one shot on the outside, and if it gets picked, it gets picked, but maybe you complete it, maybe get a pass interference, something. Because a lot of the time, it's just the sack is not what you want. A sack is almost always bad. There's very few examples where a sack is something good, and somehow there's better examples where an interception is not as bad as a sack, you know? You're 3rd and 12 and the pressure comes. Do you wanna take a sack and go to 4th and 19 and you got a punt? Or you throw up a 50-50 ball, maybe it gets picked and there's a little arm punt for you, and you also have the opportunity to get a pass interference. There's you throw up a bomb one-on-one or something, there's there's 4 outcomes that could happen, and 2 of them are positive. It's a 50-50 ball for a reason. You get a completion, you get a pass interference, you get an incompletion, or you get a pick, and sometimes you just take your shot. And it was encouraging, I guess, to say that he was pressured that many times and under pressure on, it was like 40 something percent of his dropbacks, he was getting pressured, and he didn't get sacked once, so it's definitely impressive in that regard. It's a small victory, but a victory nonetheless.
Actually, well, I'm going a different route when it comes to Anthony Richardson,
Yeah.
and I think part of it is his maturity. Um, and this isn't me just unnecessarily bagging on him. I
Seems like I mean,
Can
after
I
he
give
got
you a
benched, it
quote
seems
from?
like
Can I
he
give you a
snapped
quote
in.
from him from the combine?
Yeah.
This is like a year and a half ago. Quote. This is a tweet from Aaron Wilson, football reporter. Florida Gators quarterback Anthony Richardson. Quote: I don't care if somebody complains about me throwing too hard. They better catch it. Well, which quarterback drops per throw has had worse than I think Anthony Richardson? And when I
No,
watch it,
he's yeah.
and when I watch it, he throws the ball way too hard in situations you're not supposed to throw like nukes.
There's definitely he lacks some touch on his balls that make it easier to catch, and there are times where he zips it in there and it's like, you just gotta catch it, like, it's going right through your hands, but there's definitely also some times where he could take a little bit off and it would be just as fine, but
Like if he had AJ Brown, AJ Brown's probably catching all those like missiles that he's launching, but you
no, but
don't
you
have
don't have that.
but you don't
No,
have Devontae Smith. You don't have
no.
AJ Brown or Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
But it's not like the receivers on the Colts are garbage either. Like
No, but it's a solid group.
Josh Downs is underrated. Like Michael Pittman might not be overrated because he was underrated for a while. He's having a
Mhm.
down year due to injury. He might be a
Yeah.
little overrated, but Michael, like a lot of these passes that like are being dropped were being caught by Flacco, not because Flacco is more talented. It's because he's not throwing it 1,000 miles an hour.
Yeah,
And
no, it's something that definitely needs to be cleaned up.
and I think maybe everyone said this about Richardson was that his coachability, like he's extremely raw. He's going to have to be coached up. He's got to put in extra work in the offseason to account from his like inexperience, right? Like you look at Patrick Mahomes um when he first came to the Chiefs, like he was a guy that could throw it 1,000 miles an hour.
I mean, sad a year, yeah.
But like I think that's kind of my point with Richardson. Like look at I have a like I do follow Cam Newton at all on his YouTube channel.
I see his stuff every now and again.
Like he says a lot of insightful things, and we'll talk about it when we talk about the Cardinals later. Which
Yeah. So I'm going with the Colts for this
yeah,
game. I think I like their schedule, the way it lines up the rest of the year, and I feel like they sitting at 5-7. have an opportunity to weasel and wiggle their way into a playoff spot. They play the Patriots obviously tomorrow. Feels like they can win that on the road. They go to Denver and play the Broncos, and that's a tough spot. Like that's a tough travel. Second leg of a 2 road games in a row. That's a tough spot for sure. Oh, wait a minute. They have a bye week between that. They play the Patriots tomorrow, and then they have their bye week and play the Broncos. So that actually favors them pretty nicely. Um, but that's a huge game that if the Colts go into Denver and win on the road, all of a sudden the Colts are really in a good position to finish out the season against the Titans, against the Giants, and against the Jaguars. That pretty feasible, I think, that the Colts could win their last 5 games and finish 10-7 and perhaps sneak into the playoffs. So I'm taking the Colts here, minus
I'm
2.5 on the
taking the
road.
Colts here as well. I mean, listen, the Patriots right now, in my opinion, they're process losing. Like this will be like
Mhm.
a field goal, 4-point type game.
Yeah.
Maybe AR leads them down the field for a game-winning touchdown. Nice win for him.
Mhm.
Like, look, they're trying to get the highest. They want to be in the position to pick third or fourth overall, so they could get a shot at getting Travis Hunter
Yeah,
or
they wanna or
I
some great offensive lineman, just something.
yeah, or the receiver from Arizona, like
Something.
a
Gotta
game
get some.
change, like a franchise changing non quarterback, right?
Yeah.
They can't be winning games to do that. I'm sorry, like, sorry,
No,
that
not at
can't
all.
happen. That can't happen
No,
if they win games.
no.
So we're taking the Colts. I'm taking the Colts.
Next game we have are the Houston Texans on the road against the Jags, and the Texans are 3.5-point favorites. Trevor Lawrence, is he playing? I know he was expected to return. So, okay, so Trevor Lawrence is expected to play this game. The Texans are extremely frustrating to watch. They are not a fun football team to watch.
They're
CJ
like the
Stroud,
Jaguars last year.
yeah, CJ Stroud is not playing great football at all. Um, he's making a lot of misreads,
Doug
making a
said
lot of missed
Lawrence is
throws.
expected to play Sunday.
Yeah, Lawrence can play. So he's making a lot of misreads, a lot of missed throws. Stroud, that is.
Remember when
And
Stroud said he was the third best quarterback in the NFL?
yeah, listen, life comes at you fast. And he's not been playing well at all. Not to say he's not going to be good. Obviously, he's going to be good. But I do think that this is definitely
Well,
a
no, he's not
bump
good, Michael.
in the road. Like he's not playing well. And I think that their offense is extremely handicapped by their offensive coordinator. I don't really like it at all. They only have consistent success on the ground when they're running the football. The Texans have one of those offensive lines that is pretty good in the run game, but atrocious in the pass game. They do not pass block well at all. Stroud is under immediate pressure kind of a lot, and combo that with just him playing poor football, it's an ugly offense. It's not enjoyable to watch. For every big play that they hit and great throw that he makes, there's like an a third down sack and a missed slant pass interception, and it's just like, wow, this is
Well,
brutal. It's
Michael, let's
mind-boggling.
be let's be honest. The Texans for the last 5 years have been a complete dumpster fire, and basically like a completely inept team. If you throw out last year's Texans team.
Well, yeah, but this is like, I mean, that's the whole point. The whole point is that this is supposed to be new. Like this is a new regime, new era, new coaching, new
I
front
think
office, new
I think
everything.
when you look up the term sophomore slump in like the dictionary, I
Yeah.
think CJ Stroud might be a prime example of it for a few reasons. You mentioned like everyone is making excuses for CJ Stroud, but from what I've seen of CJ Stroud, like you said, you're correct. Like, listen, Bobby Slowick, overrated offensive coordinator. I will
Yeah, I don't even know if he's
totally agree
overrated
with that.
anymore. I think everyone knows he's bad,
He's a
honestly.
fraud. He's
Yeah,
fraudulent.
yeah.
Their O line, great at run blocking, not very good at pass blocking. I mean, Laramie Tunsil, not playing all that great. The guy's an
No,
all
it's
pro
just
tackle. I do think, though, where I see a lot of issues with Stroud last year versus this year is it looks like he's done absolutely nothing to improve from last year to this year. And I'm not saying like he's a bad quarterback. That is not what I'm saying. But it kind of reminds you a little. This is what it kind of reminds me of. Remember when Carson, after 2017, like looked like he never got better? Like he still made all the same mistakes. He didn't
yeah.
really do anything to improve. And then you hear all the things people would talk about him after the fact. And like we don't hate Carson either. You know, that's just it's just what happened.
No, it was just the fact of
If
the
you're the
matter.
Texans, you need to I like behind the scenes, like you may want to have to pull him aside and just be like, dude, like stop going on
You
all
need
these
to get better.
podcasts. You
Yeah.
need to get better. You need to do the work. Because it's like he stopped doing the work once he sort of proved that, like, you know, oh, Ohio State quarterbacks are ass, you know.
It was just like I feel like you described it really well with the Wentz thing, where it's like people make the meme. It's like, oh, CJ Stroud when teams have tape on him, but it feels true. Like the sort of mistakes he was making last year, he's making again this year, but they're at a higher clip because teams are putting him in a position to make those mistakes more. You know what I'm saying? It's like Wentz was great in 2017, and then he didn't adjust well enough to his post ACL surgery to the fact where like he just tried to keep running everything like it was 2017, but it wasn't working because you didn't have that quickness, you didn't have that mobility as much. And then as the injuries started piling up, he never adjusted his game to fit what his physical limitations became. And the same mistakes of holding the ball too long, getting strip sacked, wrong, like it kept more and more. And it was like even 2019, which we hold in like a higher regard in the Carson Wentz era, where it was like, oh, we were so proud of his gutsy wins down the stretch to lead them into the playoffs, all that sort of stuff. But how many of those games was he still making those brutal, brutal mistakes? They were just winning the game. Like the perfect example is the Washington game in Washington. He gets strip sacked in the fourth quarter, and it's the clip of him holding the tablet on his forehead, and he's like, like I genuinely thought I was like that was it, like that's going to be how they lose. It was another strip sack where he didn't feel the pressure and didn't get rid of the ball. And then they went down. They were able to get the ball back. They were able to put together a game-winning drive, and they won the game, and all was well because Washington missed the field goal after said strip sack. CJ Stroud, you need to adjust. Obviously, there was no injury. You don't need to adjust because your skill set or your athleticism changed. You just need to get better as a quarterback because you're in the NFL. Team, this is as good as it gets in football. They're gonna make adjustments. They're gonna force you in uncomfortable situations. They're gonna force you to make mistakes. You need to be able to respond and bounce back. And the reason I know he's still a good quarterback and has it in him is because he still makes throws every week that are like holy shit, like wow, that was a great throw. Like that was a cannon. That was extremely accurate. That was a very tight window. Those throws still get made, but the mistakes are so much more detrimental that it doesn't matter a lot of the times. Or if they still win, it's there feels like they're getting lucky getting out of there. And he needs to get better. He needs to improve and on limiting those mistakes and just letting your big plays be the storylines after the fact, not the boneheaded interceptions. So with all that being
I'm
said,
taking
I'm
the yeah,
taking
with being said,
Jacksonville.
I'm taking the Jags, dude.
I'm taking the Jags too,
I don't
man.
trust this Texans team at
Not
all.
even a little bit. I don't trust them at all. And like their defense is also feels like it's hit or miss. Like it's their defense and their offense is so the same. Like sometimes they look really, really good, and sometimes it's like, what in God's name are they doing? And you
Dude,
don't know what you're gonna get.
they sacked Levis 8 times last week and gave up like 28 points.
That's right, and you got a defensive touchdown. Like, it was truly a mind-boggling loss,
They're the
and
2023 Eagles.
yeah, except they're just losing a lot more games already. They never got to, like, 10-1. Like, it's the 2023 Eagles what they, like, should have been by the time they were
Like
10 and
they're like
1.
the Texans' marquee win is they concussed Josh Allen, and then the Bills just had a massive brain fart trying to
Mhm.
throw out of their own 1 yard line with like 3 minutes left.
Yeah, it's just that's how every game's going with them. So we'll see how it really feels like they're a first round exit, losing to whoever that 5 seed is, whether that be the Steelers or the Chargers. Like just absolutely. Um, or the Ravens even. Okay, next game we have the Cardinals and the Vikings. The Vikings are 3-point favorites. They're winning a lot of games despite feeling like they don't deserve to be winning a lot of games as well. They're barely skating by every week. Things are barely going their way. And for like Justin Jefferson fantasy owners and Justin Jefferson sports bettors, like it has to be very frustrating. But like the Vikings are taking advantage of the fact that teams are doing everything in their power to take away Jefferson. Like I think it was Kevin O'Connell. It was like, oh, they took away Justin Jefferson. It was like, okay, TJ Hawkinson had over 100 receiving yards. Jordan Addison had over 100 receiving yards, and like Aaron Jones had over 100 like all-purpose yards. And it's like, go ahead and um, take away Justin Jefferson,
Yeah, I'm glad he
Chicago.
said that because I feel like
Yeah,
when teams are like, "Oh man, we didn't let AJ Brown kill us," and it's like Saquon Barkley runs for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns.
oh, exactly. And like,
It's like congratulations, like
yeah, you
you
you you
still
held
you
off.
still got your ass handed to
You
you on
limited
defense.
AJ Brown, but Devonta Smith had like 7 catches for a buck 18, and you also let Goddard get like 85. And it's like, it's when you have that sort of, and it's not even, the Vikings weapons they're good, but it's not super upper echelon, but when you're taking it
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would
like
say they're
Jordan
like top
Addison's,
10.
yeah, I think they're top 10, maybe like back
I
end of
mean,
top
Jordan
5.
Addison is a off the field isn't maybe the most mature person, putting it mildly.
Yeah.
But I do
He's a
think
good player.
Jordan Addison, like low key, at least in college, was one of the most underrated players ever. Like
Playing with Pickett.
He got Kenny Pickett to be a first round pick that year because he
Yeah.
was with Pitt. He goes to USC. Caleb has one of the greatest seasons ever by a quarterback in
Mhm.
college football history.
Yeah.
History, Michael. And he's like the number two guy on the Vikings, and it feels like you said, if you're gonna double up Jay Jettas, like he's gonna go off.
Yeah. So they're playing the Cardinals this week, and the Cardinals.
I'm saying it right now. I've locked it in with the Cardinals. There's a certain player has not caught a receiving touchdown yet. Everyone's been yapping about it.
Oh, Trey McBride.
That's changing.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm taking the Cardinals plus 3. Their defense last week against Seattle played
Their best game.
stupendously just for their offense to get bullied by what I don't really believe in a Seattle defense, but their offense was not good. Could not get out of their own
I mean, Mike
way.
McDonald was a defensive genius last year. I mean, I don't think it's like he forgot how to coach.
No, but like the Seahawks defense has just been kind of soft all
Soft,
year.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
but you got I wouldn't say
Well, you know what?
bailed
They just
out.
picked up Ernest Jones, like one of the most
Mhm.
underrated linebackers in football.
Yeah, I
And
listen.
maybe that's, and like, I don't know. Remember when the Ravens defense picked up a certain linebacker that completely transformed their defense?
Yeah, and you know you had him to a 4th and 1, and Kyler overthrows the guy, and it becomes a pick six, and like totally kills any sort of Cardinals hope for the rest of that game. Um, but yeah, I'm taking Arizona plus 3 on the road here. I just think the Vikings, they've been playing with fire so much all year that it's been going their way, and I feel like they're just due to take a loss, and I think that NFC West chaos is really gonna pick up, um, and, I think the you're gonna get a week where, like, 3 of the 4 teams just keep winning, and it's just like madness every week out in the NFC West. So I'm
I'm
taking the
taking the
Cardinals.
I'm taking the Vikings. I'm going to tell
Mm.
you why I'm taking the Vikings. I saw a clip on Cam Newton was breaking down like Kyler Murray film, and he showed this one play where the Cardinals were empty, and he's like, "I'm going to show you a play where everyone says the O line sucks, but the quarterback is the reason for the sack." They go
Mhm.
empty, and I don't know if they're playing Seattle, but the team they're playing against, like, it's clearly showing they're just going to send 7 guys
Mhm.
after the quarterback, right? And he's like, "Listen, on this play, like, look, this is empty. That means that there's no one else going to come in to block for you. You're
Yep.
showing the defense that." And he's like, Kyler snaps the ball and he's like looking around, holding on the ball. So I was like, when they're running this play, like, you need to get the ball to the running back like immediately.
You need
They're,
to know that if like if the blitz does come and it's not a bluff and they're all coming, you need to know where your escape is immediately.
and
Like
I
you
feel
need to
like,
know
and
where
I
you're
and I
going with it.
honestly would not be surprised if Kyler, like, it'll be a situation. It's a close game. I'm not saying they're like, let's say it's like a 3 point, like they're tied and he just like fumbles and the Vikings just run it back for a touchdown. That's just like their identity. It's like they'll get in these close games and then someone just makes a huge play and they win.
Yeah. 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 It's been yeah, for sure. Um
Speaking of the Seahawks,
Speaking of, the Seahawks is right. The next game we have here is the Seattle Seahawks and the New York Jets. The Seahawks are only 1 point favorites on the road in New York. The Jets are about as bad as it gets. There's all the drama. Woody Johnson shows up in his helicopter like a supervillain and like is like the Grim Reaper lurking around. Rodgers is mulling over is he if he wants to play or not next year, and if he does, if it's on the Jets even. But then he says none of it's true. It's just could not imagine being a Jets fan. They're gonna be without Brees Hall this week. I'm taking Seattle -1. If the Seahawks were to lose this game, I really do think it would be a catastrophe on their part. You're coming off the humongous win at home against Arizona to put yourself in first place in the NFC West. For you to go and lose to this Jets team, which is just such an embarrassment from top to bottom, would really be just a, almost feel like a dagger, even though you might even still be in first place by the time Sunday ends, you might still be in first, but it would just feel like so demoralizing and such a missed opportunity if you let this one slip away. So I'm taking Seattle.
mm, I'm taking the Jets, and
Wow.
this is kind of my first off. They're baiting you into picking Seattle. Las
Are
Vegas is.
they? I'm
This is a
being baited?
this is a total bait. They're baiting you to pick Seattle. It's
Yeah.
probably gonna. Let's be honest, Michael. It's probably gonna push. Like, the Jets will jet it up at
Okay.
the end of the game, and then they'll win by like a point. Is what's gonna wind up happening.
Mhm.
Um, listen, I we bring up with Seattle. We're just like, you brought up, their defense is fraudulent. The Jets defense does play significantly better at home
At home.
as
Yeah.
opposed to when they're on the road. Um, Question is, like, when did they fire Sala? Did they fire him the week they played the Texans at home?
Yeah. Yeah. Their defense has been bad since Saleh got fired. Like pretty comfortably bad.
Yeah, but I do think two huge divisional wins for Seattle. You mentioned NFC West chaos.
Mhm.
If you want to see that NFC West chaos, then you need the Seahawks to lose. And then either the Rams are going to win to really muck things up,
Hmm.
or the Cardinals are going to lose again, and then it's going to be like homogenized. Everyone's in this like rat race to win the NFC West.
Hmm. Yeah. Next game we have to open up the 4 o'clock window. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road against the Panthers. Listen, the Panthers are playing some fairly good football. Bryce Young haters, potentially was myself for a little bit there, are down right now because he has been looking good.
I think it's time if you're. I was kind of buying on the dip of Bryce Young. I bought some of his rookie cards because they were dirt cheap when he got benched, and
Mhm,
I'm going to get him graded and then flip him for a substantial amount of money if he keeps playing this well.
mhm.
I will say this, Michael. This is my hot take. Over the last month, Bryce Young's been a better quarterback than CJ Stroud.
Oh, absolutely. Since Stroud came back from being, um, since Stroud came back from being benched, they
I mean, Young,
what did I say? Stroud.
Stroud.
Since Bryce Young came back from being benched, excuse me, they have been looking better on offense. They've been moving the ball better. He's been making throws. He made a lot of throws in the Kansas City game that you could have said each time, man, that was the best throw of his career. Man, that was the best throw of his career. And they were great throws down the field, traffic around him in the pocket, double covered, and he's just dropping it right exactly where it needs to be. So it's good for him. He's you could see just how much happier he is as a person. He's playing good football. He's having fun. And they did everything but finish against Kansas City. Everything is like screaming at you to take the Panthers spread, but I am going to take Tampa. And I think that we talked about that Chiefs defense and how it's been struggling or whatever. And I think a Todd Bowles led defense is really going to try to blitz the hell out of Bryce Young. And I think their secondary just can hold up a little bit better than Kansas City's right now. And Tampa, their offense looked obviously against the Giants, but it did look nice. It was nice to get Mike Evans's feet wet again before they really, I think, start pushing again for him to get to
They're
a
going to push it
thousand.
this week.
Yeah, and their running game, they got three running backs that are all pretty capable, whether Bucky Irving, Rashad White, or even Sean Tucker getting some important touches for them. They're able to kind of throw a lot of different things at you on the offensive side of the ball, even without Chris Godwin. So I'm taking Tampa, although do want to give Carolina their flowers, especially Bryce Young.
I do think the. Well, let me just throw this out in the ether. Do you think Bryce Young is kind of due for a down game? Three really good games in a row.
Like, sure, yeah.
I'm taking Tampa as well. I do
Hmm.
feel like they have a long uphill climb to like win the division because they got swept by the Falcons.
Yeah, they need to have the better record than the
Like they
Falcons.
need to win this game. They
Hmm.
need to win this game. They had a bit of a statement win. Like I don't know, man. Like blowing out the Giants. Like is that like I don't know. Like are we gonna be like oh wow? Like I like Baker, dude. Like you know me. I've liked Baker. Um, doing the
Yeah, he's
mocking them,
always pandering.
like mocking them. Like
Yeah.
man, like I don't know. Like dude, if if Carolina beats the Bucks, man, like that would like you talk about like a great positive step for Bryce Young. Like I don't know, like I've been thinking about it. Like if there's one guy that knows how to stop Baker, it's going to be the guy that fixed them in
Hmm.
Dave Canales.
Hmm.
And I'm wondering if he's telling Evero like Ajiro, like, hey,
Hmm.
this is what his tendencies are. This is what he likes, he doesn't like. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. You know what? I'm switching my pick. I'm taking Carolina.
Taking Carolina. All right. Carolina +6. Um, Next game we have is the Los Angeles Rams and the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, the Rams got totally shellacked by the Eagles. Dominated, wasn't even close. Really, was just an absolute ravaging. They were gifted a touchdown by the officials, arguably gifted 2 touchdowns by the officials, and then a garbage time touchdown at the end to make the score a little bit closer, but we were staring down the barrel of, like, a 40-10 game for a little bit there, so, yeah, the Eagles absolutely killed them.
In their own
The
building.
Saints Yeah, the Saints, on the other hand, they do stink, even though they've been
The
looking a little
Aints.
bit more competent, they are bad, and the Rams are absolutely in the thick of the NFC West race as well as the wild card race. I'm gonna take the Rams to win and cover the 2.5 point spread on the road, I think, to really it's just to help keep pushing them, uh, towards an exciting finish for them, taking Los Angeles.
Yeah, I'm taking Los Angeles as well. I do feel like it's going to be a big Puka Cooper Cup game, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Plus, yeah, I just think that the like Chris Collinsworth kind of said it best about like the Eagles. He's like they're just a physical, mauling team, and like this Saints team, ever since they've been exposed, they've been literally been packing it in every week.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Next game we have is Next game we have is the Eagle game, which we'll skip. So that sends us to Sunday Night Football in the snow. The fans are being called out to shovel in Buffalo. The Bills are 6 point favorites at home against the San Francisco 49ers. Purdy is expected to play, correct? I would assume. Is he?
let me just double check. But I mean, what was his shoulder injury? Like a strain? Like
Like he's questionable. Should
Purdy expected to play. Trent Williams,
and
Nick
Nick
Bosa
Bosa are out.
out.
Yeah, I'm taking Buffalo -6. Not really much to think here. When I said before the season that the 49ers would be like the Braves, I really didn't think it would be this similar. Like, I really just kind of said it in a way of like, I expected them to win the division in a not great division and then, like, lose earlier in the playoffs than they usually do. That's kinda where I was at with, San Francisco. And then everyone started getting hurt the same way for the Braves that everyone started to get hurt, and I was like, "Oh, like, they really are the exact same," and the Braves did make the playoffs, so maybe the Niners have some voodoo to sneak in at some point, but I truly just believe they're gonna miss at this point. They have not an easy schedule the rest of the way. This is a really tough matchup. I think the Bills should handle this one comfortably in their snow.
Yeah, I think especially after the Raiders did not do the Bills any favors yesterday, that the
Mhm.
Bills know this is a must-win game. It's a chance to make a statement in the AFC. I mean, they're in their element. I know some Bills fans I see on social media are panicking about this game because they're like, "Oh, McCaffrey, is a power back, and I don't know, like they're going to run the ball, and our weaknesses is our run defense."
Like, I
I mean,
guess, I
I
don't
mean, has
know.
Christian McCaffrey shown you anything yet to show you that he's back?
Their team's not good enough for him to really, like, pull away and be his usual self. Like, he's gonna look more like he did when he was in Carolina, where the things around him aren't that great, but, like, he shows his flashes. Like, all he's showing right now is flashes, and, yeah, it's only a matter of time before those Achilles are, like, again, a ticking time bomb, it feels like, so it'll be
What if
interesting
this
to
is the week
see.
his Achilles just explode?
It could be. It very, very well could be. Um, and then that takes us to Monday night. The Denver Broncos hosting the Cleveland Browns. The Broncos are 5.5 point favorites. I'm telling you right now, I'm taking Cleveland plus 5.5. I feel as though the Broncos story may end a bit sourly as the regular season comes to an end. I think that you look at how the Rookie of the Year race is going at the moment, and one, I'll say right, Brock Bowers should be the Offensive Rookie of the Year, and it shouldn't even be close. Jaden Daniels had a great start to the year, but has been playing pretty poorly now for close to a month, and I don't think you should get awarded the award for a good 8 games and then a bad rest of the year. Similarly with Bo Nix, the first 4 games of the season sucked. The next couple were, like, okay, and now he's been playing pretty well the last few weeks. I don't think you should get the award if you finished the last month and a half or so of the season strong. I don't think you deserve it in that regard. Brock Bowers, on the other hand, who's top 10 in receiving yards, not just for rookies, not just for tight ends, but receiving yards, period. I think that's a little bit of a better case. And perhaps my way to willing this to happen is the Broncos missing the playoffs. Like, they lose some games that they should. Bo Nix starts reverting back to some old poor habits, and the Broncos, like, just barely missed the playoffs. So I'm taking Cleveland. Not saying they're gonna win, but I do think this game's gonna be tight and a bit sweaty for Denver.
I'm taking Denver to cover
Okay.
for a couple reasons. Is number one, I know Jameis Winston is like a very fun player right now to follow.
Mhm.
We follow the trend of Jameis Winston is he has a good game and he follows it up by throwing an absolute clunker the following week. And the Denver Broncos defense, Michael, if I mean they've had one game where they've been absolute dog water, and it was on the road in Baltimore.
Mm.
Um, However, at home they allowed 13 points to the Steelers. They allowed in their losses at home 23 points to the Chargers in a very close game. I mean, 6 points to the Falcons.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really foresee this not going any different. And I do know, I think with Cleveland right now, there's like vibes, like because they beat the Steelers and they beat the Ravens. Like they're the ones that are screwing up this whole
Yeah,
AFC
they
North.
I'm gonna have them continue their reign of terror on the rest of the AFC.
Yeah, but like I just don't really see like man like I can see. I mean, we were talking about defensive players of the year candidates. One guy that hasn't been talked about enough, I don't think, is Patrick Surtain the second.
Okay.
Like I can see him picking off Winston like 3 times because no
Perhaps.
one throws his way. Most quarterbacks that are smart don't throw his way at all. When
Mhm.
you know Jameis is the type of dude that's going to say "F it," I'm going to throw the ball wherever, and he's just going to have a field day on
Mhm.
tomorrow Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
So I'm taking Denver.
And that takes us to the Eagle game. So the Eagles are 2.5-point underdogs in Baltimore. Game of the week easily. I think for the Eagles' sake, it was big that Baltimore was able to beat the Chargers. Definitely takes a bit of the desperation factor away from the Ravens this week. Obviously, every game for them is important from this point out with the way the Steelers have been playing. But you look at the way their schedule shakes out, if there was ever a loss you can afford, it's this one here against the Eagles. You know, you're at home against the Eagles, then they have their bye week, then they come out of the bye to play the Giants to tune themselves up to go play the Steelers at home, then they're at Texans, home Browns. Those are all games against teams that are either in your division or around you in the playoff race or just straight up suck. So, in terms of what would the Ravens wanna win the most? I think the one against the NFC contender is on the bottom of that list. You know, you wanna beat the teams you're supposed to beat, like the Giants. You wanna beat the teams in your division, like the Browns and the Steelers, and you wanna beat the team that's around you in the standings, like the Texans. So, you know, the Eagles game is of least importance, and them beating the Chargers was, I think, important for that regard. Going to the game itself, no Devontae Smith again. Well, I shouldn't say that for
He's
certain.
questionable.
Probably no Devontae Smith this week. Definitely no Darius Slay, who's got a concussion. So it'll be Isaiah Rodgers on the outside. The Ravens' run defense has actually been pretty solid, especially as of late. And obviously, we know what the Eagles like to do, what they did last week. But they're going to have to throw the ball to have their success tomorrow against the Ravens. And it'll be so listen, it'll be a good test. They had a good test last week against Rams' weapons on the defensive side of the ball. This week will be a good test to see if their offense and the passing game can really take over a game and come into its own, because the passing game has been like fine enough. Like Jalen's playing well and the receivers are playing well, but the passing schemes and passing designs still are leaving stuff to be desired. Definitely
Well, I
not
do
as
think it's an issue that when you have Jahan Dotson on the outside, he is so bad at getting off the line of scrimmage. He's just getting bullied.
Yeah, but I think schematically they need to be able to do a little bit more with what they have. With teams that really you are fearing what Saquon Barkley has been doing to teams, like just killing. You need to be able to pass the ball with a little bit more success, and their success rate passing is not great. They're like 25th in the league in passing, something like that. It's just there's stuff there's food on the table that they're leaving on in the passing game, and I think that this is a huge week to show that you still got it in that regard. And you might get put in a bind in that way if they're stifling your run offense. You kind of need to treat it like the
Well, if they're
Bengals
going to put
game.
7, 8 men in the box, then AJ Brown, like this needs to be like
AJ needs to have a crazy good day.
because I'm
Like,
going to tell you why, why I think he has the potential to do that. Now, the guy who I don't know, I always rip on because I feel like he's insanely overrated is Marlon Humphrey. Marlon
okay.
Humphrey is just a better version of Jalen Mills. He's great when the play is in front of him, but he is absolute dog water when there's a receiver that can get past him on a route. Like you saw it with Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase has like god tier games against the Ravens because of Marlon Humphrey. He
Mhm.
couldn't cover him in college, and he can't cover him in the NFL.
Right.
And I feel like I think you just hit the nail right on the head with the Eagles' offense. Like I guess track like what to get on track to be successful. They will have to throw the ball well. They can't just have Jalen manage the game like they've had during this win streak. I
Mhm.
do think though them not playing Devontae last week might have been to try to get him to play this week.
I mean, he didn't practice all last week either. Like, he was never playing.
You know,
But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to
I
see. I
do
do
think
think. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I do think though that this might be a game where they're going to have to be creative with Dallas Goddard.
Yeah, you need to be able to throw the ball to all your guys. Obviously, Brown's got to be the focal. Goddard's got to get more involved than he was against the Rams, and like be creative in the passing game with Dotson and Anaya Smith and Johnny Wilson. Like you have other guys, even Calcaterra, get him involved more. You have other guys. You need to use them against the bad secondary. Really see what works and figure things out with it, because you know the biggest fear we have with playing the Lions or even the Ravens tomorrow, a team that also runs the ball very, very well, is that it's a game where your offense, which has started slow all year, starts slow again, but your defense doesn't start out as hot as it started all season, where you're sitting there at halftime and you're down 17-3 and you've given up already 100 yards on the ground as a team and your offense can't move the ball. So now you get into the second half and you're a team that hasn't had great success dominating throwing the football. You've been dominating with the run game, but you're down two possessions to start out the second half. It's sometimes hard to start to establish that run game late when you're already losing big. And that's a recipe for how you potentially lose to, say, the Ravens, to say the Lions, God forbid. So you got to be able to win throwing the football. You're not just going to be able to win every single game from here on out by solely dominating on the ground. You're going to need to be able to throw.
I think the big thing in this game is so Lamar is what 21 and 1, 22 and
Ridiculous numbers
1
against the NFC.
against the NFC, and the lone loss being against the Giants, where Jalen is 13 and 3 against the
Yeah.
AFC with wins over Josh Allen,
Mahomes,
Mahomes,
Burrow.
Burrow, like all the elite AFC quarterbacks.
Yeah, he's beaten them all.
So I do. This is where I feel like
Kenny Pickett. Sorry. Sorry.
um, I I I think Jalen needs this game because everyone is just like, oh, Saquon Barkley, Eagles defense, and then like the whole like, you know, the Jalen Hurts, is he good enough to win to help the Eagles like win a playoff game? And it's
What are we talking about? Yeah,
like
exactly.
what, like
Yeah.
as long as they're not playing Tampa Bay,
Yeah.
Tampa
So yeah,
Bay.
he's got to listen. He's got to prove it, and he needs to have a big day through the air. The other biggest thing with this game is obviously the Eagles defense. They've been tested the last 3 weeks in different ways. You got what was basically like Ravens light in the Commanders, but perhaps the coaching staff of the Commanders helped make that situation a little bit easier. Then you got tested pretty heavily with the Rams. And listen, the Rams, they had success on offense with something. A lot of play action crossers that were getting open with man
Michael, the
coverage.
week you praised Darius Slay, the Ravens decided to run motion at Darius Slay, and he was getting dominated.
Yeah, he was getting cooked. They were cooking him for a little bit, and then he got hurt, and Rodgers was getting cooked a little bit. They were listen, the Rams, they don't suck every year when they're healthy for a reason, and they're able to get guys open with their bootlegs and their other play action and the crossing routes, and things just work for them. They absolutely work. But the Eagles, they were doing a good job. Give them credit. Their pass rush was coming up big in big spots. Such a shame. Brandon Graham probably had the game of the year for him this year, last week. Terrible torn tricep out for the season. They This is another test that there's no one in the NFC that you'll play that is anything like the Ravens in terms of having like Lamar Jackson, as such a weapon. But it'll be another test of a team that's going to really try to run the football and run the ball down your throat. And a mobile quarterback that's obviously significantly better than Jaden Daniels, and it's gonna put a lot of pressure on the linebackers again to stay disciplined and to be able to tackle an open field well. And you'll just kinda see how they handle it. It'll be interesting. I'm excited for it, and I think
I,
it's gonna go
I
well.
do
But
think that the for the Eagles' run defense, I mean, so far this year, I mean, just trying to think of like power backs that gave. I mean, Derrick Henry's a 101, but like my thing is that listen, Derrick Henry's gonna probably run for 100 yards, and he's probably gonna get a touchdown. Like that's just inevitable because he's been doing it the entire season. Where the Eagles are going to have to stop the Ravens is they're going to have to frustrate Lamar because Lamar loves to spread it around to all of his receivers. And you need to get him frustrated where like he likes to find open spots on the defense. And you look at Quinion Mitchell playing really well. Cooper DeJean's going to have a big game because they like to use their tight ends. They like to use their slot receivers. They like to use their running backs in the passing game, like
you know, you
Justice
gotta
Hill.
they gotta be ready to tackle, and they need to be like the D backs. You need to be aggressive with your defensive backs in order to help also support the run game. Um, and then just trust that your defensive backfield is a lot better than their offensive weaponry, which it is, in my opinion. So you kind of need to be able to flex that muscle. We'll see how they handle losing Brandon Graham. It's a huge loss. It can't be, can't be overstated because he obviously rushed the passer really well, a couple huge sacks, but his play in the run game has almost always been what he's best at. It's been as an edge run game defender, it's been incredible. He was game wrecking against the Rams, just blowing plays up, setting the edge hard, making tackles, and you need to replace that. And it'll be interesting to see what combinations they decide to throw out there, whether that's Milton Williams on the outside a little bit more or, you know, extra five-man fronts maybe a couple times. Nolan Smith needs to, elevate his level of play. He's been playing well, but it's like, listen, when they won the Super Bowl, the Eagles, they had a lot of injuries to some very important positions and some very important players, and players stepped up their game in replacement of them. This feels, like the Jason Peters loss, but Vaitai came in and he played really well, and you didn't feel you didn't have Jason Peters a lot. You need Nolan Smith to be able to come in and replace what Brandon Graham was providing in addition to what he's already been doing, and you'll feel that a lot less if he's able to do that well. So,
I
this will
have
be the test. It'll be interesting.
I do have a last point, and then we'll just wrap up the show for the day.
Yeah.
Is this the big issue I feel with the Baltimore Ravens, and why I don't think people want to fully, like, I guess, put their eggs in the Ravens basket, is that they are in the fourth quarter, Michael. They choke, like Lamar bails them out
Yeah.
so much in the fourth quarter, which is why I think he is the league's most valuable player. You know,
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
not Saquon or Josh Allen, not to take anything away from them. Oh my God, I'm not picking Saquon to win the MVP. I'm a horrible Eagles fan. But Michael, like, if the Eagles are going to win this game, like, if they're down by 7 in the fourth quarter, like, you have to feel like we're going to win the game.
Yeah, the Ravens, they've been finding ways to lose unimaginably and, like, finding ways to just give the other team the opportunity to take it. Like, they hand these games on a silver platter to the other team, and listen, the Eagles, if they're in one of those positions, they gotta be able to steal it, and they can't just let it slip away. You're getting to a point we talk about how big that Packers-Lions game is next week, and, if the Lions win, the Eagles are gonna need a lot of help in order to get the 1 seed, but if the Packers win, the Eagles all of a sudden have the tiebreaker over Detroit, and you control your own destiny. Controlling your own destiny only matters if you win tomorrow, and I know it's a lot to ask to say, like, "Oh, they kinda just need to win out," but, like, they almost kinda just need to win out if they really want the 1 seed. Um, it's gonna be a lot to ask from Detroit to lose the Packer game and then another game on top of that in order to have the tiebreaker at 3 losses. It's gonna be a lot, and, you know, I'm not saying that, like, "Oh, oh, if they don't do it, like, they don't have a chance to win in Detroit," but we know how much of an advantage it would be to not only have the bye week, for the playoffs, considering, the early bye for the Eagles. It actually helped them a lot to get their season back on track, but these are a lot of games in a row that you're playing. Having a bye week before the playoffs would be wonderful for your guys to get a break. And then also, if you gotta play Detroit, having them come down here instead of having to go up into their dome, it would definitely be a lot better to get them outside, get Jared Goff outside in the cold, as opposed to letting them allow to play indoors in their dome. So, it's not the end of the world if they don't get it, but it would be a huge help too, and it starts tomorrow. I'm taking the Eagles plus 2.5. I do believe they're the better team than the Ravens, slice it any way you want. I do think that they're better as a whole and as a unit, and I'm taking them to win.
I'm taking the Eagles as well. I feel like the Ravens are going to have control of this game for a good portion, and they're just going to let it go because I just like when they lose, it's like they all of their losses are due to them just failing, like just literally handing the game away.
Right.
Like handed the game to the Chiefs. Okay, well
Mhm.
that's like been the story all season for the Kansas City Chiefs. They out aura like all of their opponents.
Yeah.
probably should have lost one of their games to the Bengals, right? Um,
Hmm.
Chargers, I mean, like Stonehands McGee and Quentin
The
Johnston.
game should have just been tighter.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
they flirted with the loss
they
with the
they
Cowboys.
legit
Like,
self-destructed against the Steelers.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
So it'll be interesting,
we'll
but
see. All right, yeah. So I'm taking the Eagles as well. But that's it for our show, everybody. Um, hopefully, we'll be able to talk about an Eagles win next week.
hmm
It's exciting, man. We got like four of the next 6 games are home games, man.
yeah. So it'll
So
be
we have a
fun. Get
lot
back
of
at the.
tailgating to get in. But
Hmm.
yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. This is the P-Lot Podcast. John signing off, along with Michael. Take care.
We are part of the Fired Up Sports Network of shows. Please check out other Fired Up Sports Network podcasts like the P-Lot Pod, Water Cooler Talk, Bell Smashers, Philly Sports Love and Pain, Drunk on Broad, Beer Battered Sports, and the Fired Up Sports Show, which are available on all major podcasting hosting sites and social media. Also, check out Mark Ramos' Roundup on firedupsports.com, which breaks down the happenings going on with all your favorite local teams.